meeting, May 18, 2015. Susan, would you take attendance, please?
Yes. Valerie Anderson. Here. Tony Bedini. Alan Brown.
Yes.
Gregory Pava.
Here.
Michelle Gora. Here. Emily Hibbard.
Emily's going to be late, but she will be on.
James Hirschfield.
Yes.
Kelly Lamont is absent. Jennifer Cody. Here. Michael Sinatra.
Here.
I am here. And Peter Tagley.
All right, thank you. So everyone's here except Emily and Kelly. And Emily contacted me and said she would. All right, item number 2, recognition of volunteers. Dr. Costantino.
Yes. Every year, we choose a volunteer from each school to recognize for their outstanding service. I see some of them in the audience. I just want to give my camera to Mrs. Files. She can take, hopefully it'll work. I have a little storage issue. So, one of our main goals in Region 12 is not only to do what's best for children and the community, but it's also to build that collaborative relationship between our parents and our community members, because as someone said, it takes a village, right? So we have one from each school. I know that our Burnham parent is not here, so I'll just start with her, and that's Erin Elavecki. And what I'm going to do with Erin and 2 of the students who cannot be here in 2 weeks, I'm going to ask them if they can come on June 15th, so we can just recognize them. But Erin is this year's Burnham School Volunteer Extraordinaire. Erin has served as the PTO President and Vice President for the past 2 years at Burnham School. She is a tireless advocate of student needs and a staunch supporter of faculty and staff. She's participated on countless Burnham School activities, as well as chaired them, including the dance that we had, was that in February, January or February here, which was great fun for all the elementary schools. Most recently, Erin has worked with Booth Free and Burnham on the movie night and the family dance night, which I just said. She keeps everyone well informed, and we can always count on her for receiving the PTO update regularly. She is really a wonderful mom and a wonderful volunteer. She's not here, but we just want to recognize Erin. So we'll give her a big hand and let her know. And hopefully she will come to the meeting on June 15th. Or even the next meeting she could come. So she doesn't have to wait till June 15th. We have a couple of students who can't come next week. So our next volunteer is from Booth Free School, and it's Paula Conway, and she has 3 children here. Come on up, Paula, you have to come up. You can bring your kids if you want. Paula's husband is here too, and he is Jason Conway, and he works for us. He is our physical education and health teacher at the high school and the middle school, and he's also the instructional leader. He does a great job.
She thinks she's getting the award.
Are you getting the award? So Paula is this year Booth Free's School Volunteer Extraordinaire. She has a commitment to the school and the community, and it's always apparent. Paula has served as the PTO president for the past 3 school years. She has participated and chaired countless Booth Free School activities, fundraisers such as Square One Art and the Lyman Orchard Pie Sale. She has a very active little daughter here. She's also been involved with movie night, breakfast with Santa, the clothing drive, bingo, the egg hunt, and the spring celebration, and the end of the year block party. Most recently, Paula has worked with Burnham School and WPS's PTOs on United projects, which we've been doing across the 3 elementary schools, which have been very, very successful. Paula also keeps everyone well informed with the PTO update every Sunday evening, and she's just a wonderful part of our community, and we appreciate it, and she's a great mom. She has 3 little kids. Is it 3? Yes! The boys are being so good. Good job, boys. And
So's Dad.
is it Amanda or Olivia? Amelia, I knew it was one of those names. I love one of those old-time names. Amelia, who's a cutie patootie. So Paula, thank you so much. Wonderful job. There we go. Okay, excellent. Bill King can't be here tonight either. Now, Bill King is, maybe he can't come tonight? He can't come next week. Could he not? Oh, he can't come tonight too, I think he told me. Bill King can't come tonight, and his 2 children can't come in 2 weeks. So they'll all come on the 15th, I guess. But it's great, first of all, to see a man being recognized. And Bill is the 2015 Volunteer Extraordinaire from WPS. He's an active member of the PTO, serving as treasurer. His attention to detail, financial knowledge, and creativity has guided the PTO responsibly. Additionally, Bill has overseen many important projects such as Scholastic Book Fair, which is going on this week if you need a book, Bus Driver Appreciation Breakfast, and the Scripps Gift Card Program. He is also willing to listen objectively and offer advice and innovative ideas to support the PTO leadership and membership. Washington Primary School proudly recognizes and thanks Bill King for his generosity of time and energy for his leadership to the school community. So, unfortunately, he's not here, but good job, Bill. So our next person is here, and hopefully I said her last name correctly. It's Tamsin Marquise. Marchese, come on over. Marchese, close enough. I only know first names for a lot of people.
And I have 3, but I couldn't drag my kids. Enjoy it while you can. Mine are teenagers and
They don't even want to be with you, right? Absolutely. Tamsin Marchese. Casey, there we go. Served as president of the Chippewa Valley Middle School PTO for many years and volunteered to oversee the transition from middle and high school parent organization to unified Chippewa Valley PTO, which was wonderful. Her active participation in Region 12 service organization spans her children's careers. Leanne will graduate from Chippewa next month. Very exciting. Matt is completing his sophomore year, and Christopher is completing his 7th grade experience. Tamsin brings her expertise in the health field to our annual Health and Wellness Day, where she encouraged Mrs. Gallo to a lengthy planking model. Very nice. Tamsin organizes refreshments and treats for students and staff alike at a variety of school events by convincing numerous parents, and I've had these, to present culinary creations, never an easy task with our busy families. She and her daughter Leanne created enchanted evenings as DJs at the middle school dances, which have been fabulous, absolutely fabulous. And in short, Tamsin is the engine that drives the PTO here, and we couldn't be more grateful for her dedication and hard work. Congratulations. Good? Oh, one more. There we go. Okay, thank you. And our last, we always have a district volunteer, and this year it's Michelle Bora. Come on up, Michelle. Michelle's husband is here, supporting her, wonderful. He was also our hockey head coach. They had a great year this year. So Michelle Bora has been a member of the Board of Education since September 2004, which is 11 years. She is currently the chairperson of the Policy Committee. She represents us on the Education Connection Board, and she's also on the Education Committee. She is highly organized and extremely professional, which is wonderful. She has a calming influence on the board and is always rational and a voice of reason. Don't you agree?
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. I think so. Michelle is a breath of fresh air. She always has a warm smile on her face that is welcoming and inclusive. You will find Michelle volunteering in our schools at the musicals, cheering on the hockey team, running the snack bar at the hockey rink, at other sporting events, cheering on not only her 2 girls, but all of the other students. And she also has tutored our students, helping them prepare for the CAPs for those students who skipped Energy and Earth Essentials for the CAPs. So we really, it was a wonderful thing that she did there. Michelle also joined me and Ann Baldwin and students and Karen to go to the state capitol to lobby for our agri-science STEM program, so we're very happy about that. She is definitely an asset to our schools and our community, and we are very, very fortunate to have her and someone of her caliber and professionalism on our Board of Education. So thank you. Great job. Excellent. So before I have our chairman say a few words, when he's done, we do have cake and refreshments, and I hope everybody will partake, including the kids. And Mr. Hirschfeld, would like to say something to you?
Yeah, just on behalf of the Board of Education, although Dr. Casavino certainly speaks for the board, I would just like to say to myself and for the board, thank you for all our volunteers, those who were recognized tonight. A wonderful job. Makes the running of the school system a lot easier. And there are other volunteers, obviously, who are not recognized tonight, and the system depends on these people, all of you. So thank you very much for your service. We appreciate it very much. All right, I'm moving on to our agenda then. Item 3, opportunity for the public to comment on agenda items. Is there anyone who'd like to address this? All right, is there anyone? All right, seeing no one, then I'll move on. Item 4, consent agenda. Consists of our minutes of our annual district budget meeting on May 4th, and then our business meeting on May 4th. Unfortunately, I was unable to be here, and Alan chaired those meetings. Thank you, Alan. Does anybody seek to remove anything from the consent agenda? All right, seeing no one, then the consent agenda is approved. Report of the chair. Just a couple of things I'd like to mention. I received a letter from Principal Kim Gallo about events going on at the school, which I was invited to, and I'd like to make the rest of the board aware if they're not aware. It was the middle school concert was last Thursday here at 7 o'clock. The high school concert is tomorrow night, May 19th at 7 o'clock. The academic awards night at the cafeteria will be on Wednesday, May 27th at 7 o'clock. Light refreshments will be served from 6:30 to 7. That's the academic awards night. The athletic awards night will be on Friday, June 5 at 7 o'clock. For students from grades 9 through 12. Scholarship night, which is usually a very impressive night, is on Tuesday, June 9 at 7 o'clock. The high school commencement will be here on Saturday, June 13 at 10 a.m. And then the middle school promotion ceremony will be held in the auditorium on Thursday, June 18 at 7 p.m. So obviously all members of the board are invited to those. If you need any, if I said that too fast, if anybody needs those dates, I have this year. Just some things that I noticed since I was here last. Area scholar athletes honored by the CIAC. From Chippewa were Kelsey Johnson and Sam Krebs. So congratulations to them for being named scholar athletes by the Connecticut Inter-Athletic Conference, I believe. I just wanted to congratulate all the students on their various sports teams this spring. They all had good years. The baseball team, the softball team, the track team, and the girls' tennis team won the Berkshire League. They were undefeated, 15-0. So congratulations to them. I'm very happy to report that our budget's passed in all 3 towns, so that was a good night for the region. Thank you. That's all I have. There's a lot of good things going on, and we should all be very proud of it. So that's what I have. All right, moving on to superintendent's report.
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't know if this is the right part of the agenda, but there's been a couple of letters from Edgar in the New Milford Times regarding the busing issue, which I think we've discussed in the past.
Mr. Wainwright.
Right.
Yes.
And I think it's important to get our side at some point in the paper, because the paper prints one side, and the board side is never in the paper. I think it can't come from a board member. I think it should come from the chairman or the superintendent. I mean, I didn't find it a negative thing that he wrote, but I remember the issue regarding the busing and everything. And I think that it's important, no matter who writes letters to the editor in whatever paper, that our side has to be presented. And when you don't present your side, people get one side, and it puts the board in a negative posture. So I don't know how you would want to address these things, but I think at some point we should have a formula for getting our issue on the table and why we voted in the way we did.
It has not been I will say that it's not been my practice to answer letters in the paper every time they come out. If there's something that I feel is really outrageous, I've answered letters as an individual board member. When the board authorizes me to, I'll answer it as chair of the board. But it's not my practice to answer because I think I could be spending my whole life, a great part of my life doing that. I read the letters that you referred to. I don't think that he was making declarative statements, and he was asking questions about the bus issue, and he said he had looked at other. So I think it's something that we could at least address at the meeting. I know that we have an answer to his questions. I know Bob's not here tonight.
The letter. Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, I just think it's important that
It was about
the
the
board,
payment of the private bus.
Oh, can I just add to that?
That was
That
answered.
we've sat and had lunch and meetings with Mr. Wainwright and explained what that item 512 is, and you all know in budget building time, I make a big point of it. And I just said, we don't like it either, but it's state statute, and by all means, if you want to shine a light on it, fine, but it's not just us, there are other school systems. So I didn't see that letter, but we have answered his questions repeatedly, face to face.
And then he wrote the letter.
right, so what I'm saying is that the
Well, maybe
board,
it was an old, maybe it
the board needs public relations, and the board's public relations should always have why we do what we do when we vote on it. And it's not to be combative in any
No, I
way.
understand.
And I think we should have a vehicle, not every time, but in certain times.
All right,
So
I
the public
appreciate
doesn't get a slanted view of why we make it, how we make our decisions.
Right, that's a good point. That probably should be answered. It's just,
I'm not altogether in favor of being defensive in the newspapers regarding such an issue. That is town by town issue. We can address that within the town, within our budget hearings. And I don't know that a rebuttal is necessary. You know, I read Valerie's response, and it was straight and to the point. It's something that we discussed at our meeting. It is legal responsibility. Bob addressed it very succinctly, and indicated that was, in fact, the best way of meeting the state requirement. I think we need to let that go by the wayside. We shine in other ways in the newspaper, and with how we do what we do. And those are the things that we need to highlight, not be defensive. That's
We're not defensive. We're explaining
we
why
don't
we
need to
do
explain.
what we do when someone gives their opinion positively, negatively. What we discuss at board meetings doesn't necessarily, it hasn't been getting in the paper. When someone makes a statement about fiscal, how we handle fiscal matters, we need to make sure that the public has both sides of why we make our decisions.
I don't think
I
the
don't
public
call that,
Okay.
I don't see that as
Milford
combative.
and all points yonder. These are
What are the
issues within our
topics?
towns.
I don't see that as combative. I see the board must get to the public at times why we do what we do, and what's the process, what's the decision, what goes into that decision-making process. Otherwise, you're a dartboard.
thank you, Peter. Michelle?
Well, I think it just highlights one of the times when we have to sort of make a judgment as to how significant the letter is, and I think I'm siding with Susan on this one, is that this one might not be as significant, but I could be wrong. We don't want erroneous information in the paper, and even though Mr. Wainwright was answered in person and through email and by the administration and our chair of finance, unfortunately his letter still ran in the paper, and all those answers did not So I think that's unfortunate, but maybe this time it's kind of a small, I don't know that that's a very hot button issue, but if it were, we would have to be, I think, rather swift in making sure we correct the mistakes. But I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe that will get some traction and people will be really upset and misinformed. So I guess we have to have a mechanism for deciding when does it require some sort of response and when is it best to just let it go.
Just a moment. I just want to state for members of the public who are not aware that what we're talking about, this issue has to do with the requirement by state law that the region pay for transportation for private school students who go to private school within the region. Valid.
Well, I think that we should all be the eyes and ears. I read a lot of the local newspapers, always skim through Voices, Spectrum, LCT, of course, Waterbury Republican. There are a few things that I've gotten lately that I've forwarded to Jim and Pat and others for their comments or as a heads up. So if you see something, say something. How's that for a slogan? Because
That might catch on.
I think it's taken. Because then we know that there's maybe information out there that needs to be addressed, or that there have been some letters that can get very frustrating because it's like we come off looking like idiots. Well, we've been there and we've done that and we put these issues to rest, and if anyone came to the meetings or read the minutes, they could see that. But sometimes there is good information out there and a good way, a cue for us to respond. So I would have been, if I had seen this letter, I would have been more than happy. What paper was it in, Pete?
It was in the repertoire.
It was in the
I mean,
business
you know,
too, I think.
bingo, we would have
Weekend.
sent a reply, and I told them to send that reply as soon as possible. It would have been educational for a broader group. So if you see something, ...
Peter, I will take a look at that.
Would you?
Yes.
I mean, it's not to be combative.
No, I understand. Anything else? All right, thanks. Thank you. All right, superintendent's report. Trustee.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I want to first just give some kudos to Mrs. Files and Mrs. Mayer and the administration from Chapag. On Thursday, May 14th, we had an engineering panel. It was fabulous, absolutely fabulous. We had 6 members from all around Connecticut and greater New England area, including Mrs. DeBrito's husband and Mrs. Mayer's brother, talking to the students about engineering and what it is to be an engineer, and the students generated very high-level questions from Mrs. Bambino's class. Another shout out there, and it was a wonderful, wonderful hour-long presentation, which was riveting. I mean, the students were listening, the whole student body was there, you couldn't hear a pin drop. Then after that, seniors left, went to work on the senior projects, and some of them, and then we had the academy students, which is our digital arts and sciences program. They did their presentations for the expo that's coming up, because we can't send all students to the expo. You saw a couple of presentations the other day. Remember, you had the students who stops the car when you hit 20 and all that coding. So they were there, and then there were excellent groups, all from Chapag, girls, boys. It was wonderful. And then there was an actual, in the mall, like almost, I'll say, a science fair expo, where the students were able to share and answer questions and give more detail. And plus also get some feedback from the students and the presenters. So it was really wonderful. I have to tell you, the whole morning was fabulous. And with that said, this Thursday is the Stephen Wright Memorial Assembly, and that's at 9:30. And I'll just ask Ms. Gallo for 2 seconds to just talk about the specialness of this year's celebration.
Ray Wright came to see me last week, and he brought a copy of a documentary that Fox News has created. Oh, I'm sorry. He brought a copy of a documentary that Fox News has created. They're doing a series of Gold Star families, and for those of you who don't know, Gold Star families are those who have lost folks in the war. They are doing documentaries on them all throughout Memorial Day weekend, but our assembly will feature the first public viewing of the documentary regarding Stephen Reich. I had the extreme honor to view that with Ray. It was very emotional. I'm not often a puddle, we both were, but it's amazing. It's so well done, and it's such an honor to him, and I'm so thrilled that our students are going to have such an amazing example of answering a call to citizenship.
So that's 9:30 on Thursday, and we're, after Memorial Day, we are allowed to then broadcast it on our channel, and hopefully Ann will get us a press release on that, or somebody here, so we're very excited about that. And then this Wednesday, May 20th, is our third Road Ag Science STEM show in Washington. You know, we are publicizing as much as we can. We haven't gotten big turnouts, but we have gotten turnouts. Any board members who could come, especially the Washington board members.
The town hall.
It's at Town Hall, 7 p.m. and Wednesday. So if you can come, that would be great. We have an appointment. Sydney Santiago is going to be working at the front entrance because Vincent Cosentino has resigned. He has a more permanent job with health No, actually, I think he did a good job, and the kids really liked him. He said that there are kids who are very upset he's leaving, and they said to him, "Why are you leaving?" And they said, "Well, you know, I need benefits and a little more money." And he says, "Your mother's the boss, ask her for benefits." And he says it doesn't work that way. So it was cute. So he sent a resignation today. Dear Mom. Resignation. But I think we're allowing him to work here. I think it was a good experience for him. And then we also have a resignation, Gail Thorson, a literacy tutor. She's resigning. She's been here many years. I think she's thinking of retiring and resigning. And then a leave of absence, Kristen D'Souza, who you met, is the K-1 teacher who was very pregnant.
Yep.
And she's going to be taking a year off. So that is my report.
All right.
Do you need action on the resignations? I'd just like to say that I've known not Mr. Constantino very long, but certainly Gail Thorson. She was very, very helpful to a whole, many generations of children at WPS.
Anything else for this? Michelle?
Well, I just wanted to comment on the expo and the engineering presentation, which I actually didn't realize that Mrs. Huffman was there, but I wanted to thank you all for organizing that, and I just wanted to say that my daughter, who's in high school, who has been very undecided about what she wants to do, was really sparked by the engineering panel and is considering looking at that as a future path for herself. And I can't tell you how exciting it is just to have something to focus on, whether that happens or not. So thank you very much for that. That was fantastic.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else for Dr. Costello? All right. And moving on to item 7, our education committee agenda. 7.1, Baldwin Media Marketing Update. And Baldwin, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Congratulations on passing your budget. That's great news.
In order to do that, okay. If I could just quickly address, the letters to the editor, and as I sat there and heard that conversation, I agree. You do need to pick and choose your battles, but usually in those situations, you got to pick and choose them quickly because you can't send a response, 2 weeks after the issue's been published. So we just had a situation with the Journal Enquirer, and it was on what the board didn't know, and the question was, does the board want to remain ignorant? That was the actual question. And they were using ignorant, they tried to justify it. Anyway, so after that, I recommended to both Bob Rader, the head of CABE, and Joe Cirasulo, they co-wrote a response to that in supporting boards and superintendents because it was just blatantly horrible. And then the JI still got it wrong. They left Bob Rader's name off a joint piece that was sent by him. So, it's just a constant battle. But, if those questions ever do come up and there's an issue and you want to know, and I can help you in any way respond, please, let me know if I can help and assist you with that, because it can become a full-time job, absolutely. And then there are guidelines and ways to submit it. So with that said, I just wanted to throw that out. So I want to tell you that there was a big delivery here on Friday. I don't know if any of you heard about that. Anybody hear about that? Big delivery? Something in a crate? No? All right, good. Well, I'm really excited because I've been working on this for a long time, and Fox News out of Hartford redid their news set. So I pleaded and begged and pleaded, and we actually got their old set. And even though this is being televised, I was told we could sell it on eBay for a lot of money, and I asked Pat if she wanted to just sell it and run away, but we didn't do that. So, it was Don who had his folks come down and pick it up on Friday, and now the question is just how to get it where it needs to be. So I want to just show you this picture, if I can. This is what it looks like. It's very close, so you can pass that around.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's huge. It's huge, huge, huge. And there's no charge to the district for that. So, other than what you had to pay to get it up here. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm really excited with working with the high school and with Karen, maybe doing some things with students in the fall on broadcasting and figure out how we can best utilize that set. So no more round table with bad tablecloths over them. That's the good news. All right, I want to move right along. The other thing that we've been working on is obviously, the town meetings about the Ag Science STEM program, which are, not always that well attended. However, to me, it's quality, not quantity all the time. And it's also that word transparency that the community is always asking for. So, hats off to the towns and to the folks on that committee that we've met with on a regular basis to keep communicating that and getting the message out on that. So our other initiative is we're working on rebranding. For now, we're starting with the Region 12 logo. There's no real consistency. Everybody kind of does their own thing. So what we wanted to do was first start and take a look at the Region 12 umbrella, if you will. And then once we get through this process, we'll work with the individual schools on their logos, knowing that a lot of them already have things like bees and what are the other ones? A star and the bird, St. Bernard. So, obviously we don't want to drastically change that. We want to keep with the tradition, but we're not there yet. So based on that, we have had quite a few meetings and we came up with some concepts, and I'll pass this along. And I've kind of numbered them. And as we had our regional meeting, we also discussed in there, and I got some feedback, from Carolyn and others about, what they like, what they don't like. What we're going to do too is come up with every logo, every color has what's called, it's almost like a Pantone, it's called a PMS color that is attached to it. So that when everybody prints something, it will all be the same blue and white. So hopefully over time, your school uniforms will be the same blue and white, your logos will be the same blue and white, your business cards, everything that you put out there will have some consistency so that people start to recognize it when they see the Region 12 logo. So these are just some of the things that we came up with. And then the other challenge was, what's our tagline? What does Region 12 do? So these are just a couple of samples. A community committed to public education. We heard back, not sure that the words public education are a positive. They might be a negative. So we listened to a lot of people's different feedback. Another one, public education with a purpose. Building tomorrow's future today, one student at a time. And so, again, based on feedback, I'll go ahead and send this around. This is the one that we actually came up with. And there is apostrophe missing, so I wrote it in with a marker. That was my graphic artist mistake, but I didn't have time to fix it before I came here tonight. So what we have here are the three circles kind of representing the three towns. And then the common color in the middle shows kind of how you all intersect and how you all come together. So Regional School District 12, we put in the towns, Bridgewater, Roxbury, Washington, building tomorrow's future, one student at a time. So these are just two different layouts for the same concept. And again, I think it's important that the board, buys into this as well and you all have your input. This is not set in stone. This is not what it is. However, decision by committee sometimes can get painful. So I'm hoping that we can move this along fairly quickly. So what I'm going to do is pass these So this is where we started again, and then,
Trying to get input and then,
This is where we
not
ended
only
up.
from you, but the administrative team and, move in a direction of some kind of a decision. So this is really one of the first steps.
Stationery and signage in the front, everything.
yeah, and that's the other thing, we're gonna build, so we'll have a template at the bottom of every press release and correspondence that goes out. Every form, everything will, again, start to have some sort of consistency.
Can I just ask a question? So the committee that worked on this is just the PR committee, or was it a larger committee?
It was the PR committee at this point.
Okay.
PR committee there's one person from each town, so it's me and Ann, and then it's Carolyn Dwyer from Bridgewater, it's Barbara Henry from Roxbury, and it's Dan Scher from Washington.
And Dan brought up a really good point as we had our last meeting last week, and he believes that He believes that the tagline really should talk about, what's in it for the community. Why do you educate kids, not what's in it for the kids. So that's just one person's opinion. I kind of changed the tagline based on his input. But again, I'm open to other people's input and feedback as well. So over the summer, my goal is by the end of summer to get this one done and to get the other School 3 logos done as well.
I find tomorrow's future to be redundant. Building tomorrow's future. I just find that to be, that jumps out at me as sort of saying,
Building the future.
Building
tomorrow or
Hold on, we don't have to decide this right now.
I'm just, that's what when I see that, and that's part of a handful of words, the tomorrow's future jumps out.
Well, why don't we let Ms. Baldwin finish her presentation?
All right, and great, no, that's the kind of feedback I want. So I don't know how you want to handle, Mr. Board Chair, the feedback or what the process will be for that.
I quite frankly, I hadn't thought about it, but the superintendent just suggested that perhaps board members could email her with their comments so that she can get them to the committee.
All right, or you know what, if you all have a tagline that your eyes pop open in the middle of the night and you think it works, or you're having a couple glasses of wine and something comes up. That's usually when it happens, let me know. That's perfect.
Do you have that in email form?
Yeah, what I can do is I can get that to Pat, and then maybe you can put it out there so that everybody can see it.
Take a picture of it and then send it to everybody.
Yeah, you could do that too. So I guess, we've been very, very busy. Pat and I have also looked at our long-term plan over the course of the summer. We've got a lot of things that we really want to get working on. So, but I got to tell you, I'm really excited, I think more than you are, about that new set. That is that is so huge. And the fact that it's already got the blue on it is perfect. But that is right from the Fox newsroom. It's so cool. So I would love to do a panel discussion for future broadcasters. That's what I'd love to do. All right, I think that's really my main.
Okay, thank you very much.
Have we thanked Fox News? How have we?
Oh, here's what I'd like to do. Yeah, here's what, we wrote a letter. We started with a letter that Pat wrote. And that's how we, because he wanted to prove it was really coming here. And so what I'd like to do is get the kids around the set and do a video thank you.
Sure.
That's what I'd like to do. So or maybe we could even make the news by showing them how we're trying to get it into the room. I'm not sure. So,
Nice.
Yes. Any other questions, comments? No?
Can we do a press release on that?
Well,
Cute, and it'll focus on the TV studio.
yeah, I think what we could do is, I don't know so much a press release, but maybe target certain media in this area that would really care about that. I think that's a great idea. I mean, I don't think Channel 30 is going to cover the fact that we got a Fox set.
No, I'm just saying.
No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Absolutely. Yeah, we'll get some press out of that for sure.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your work. We'll try to get this, a decision on all this as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, those are hard.
It's a work in progress.
All right. Next, College and Career Center and 5-year review of most competitive college acceptances. Todd Dyer, Michelle McManus.
Michael.
I'm sorry, Mike, sorry.
You'll quickly see your error. It's okay. The purpose of tonight's conversation is about the College and Career Center and a very brief snippet about the Alumni Association that we've been forming, which is very exciting. However, some information came our way that I thought was important. I'm very happy that Dr. Cosentino put it on the agenda. We were at one of those publicity committee meetings, and one of the comments that was made is, you know, we wouldn't be having this conversation if you got 10% of your kids into Ivies. And I thought about that. I really went home and I thought about that. It's one of those things that you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you say, wait a minute. And what we thought about was, we do get 10% of our students into the most competitive colleges. So we did a 5-year study. And in that 5-year study, and you know that we use the Barron's rating system, which is, they rate colleges, and they've done that for many, many years. Colleges come in and out of highly competitive. It's an organic process. But each year, we divide our graduates, our acceptances, into most competitive, highly competitive, very competitive, so on and so forth. And what we're trying to do is to give you more bird's eye views, more answers that are easily explainable to the public, because we continue to labor under this discussion that Serpong doesn't get kids into good schools. So one of the sheets that you're going to get tonight is 2010 to 2014, the number of graduates that graduated each year. How many by person got into the most competitive schools, and that means if Mike got into 3 most competitive schools, we only count him once, we're not cooking the books here, the percentage that represents of the class, and then we also took highly competitive, and we did that percentage, and I'm very happy to report, pardon me? Yeah, that'd be great. And I'm very happy to report that in a 5-year average, we are at 8.8% in the most competitive colleges as an average. And when we add we're on an upward trend. So when we add 2015 in, we will be at 10%. And when you include highly competitive in those statistics, we're at 28.4%. So almost a third of our, thank you. I love the way I say thank you like I'm personally responsible. Everyone in this room is. I think that's a very strong statistic, and I think perhaps that when we get these perceptions that become reality in all communities, not just these are the kind of snippets of an answer that board members can give that say, you know what, we did that study. And we get nearly 10% of our kids into the most competitive colleges. If you turn the paper over that you've just been given, it's a sample of some of the most competitive schools, a sample, not all of them, and it's a sample of highly competitive schools. And you see that most competitive schools, they may not all be Ivies, but they're all very famous and for very good reason. So when you look at the U.S. Naval Academy, or you look at Yale, or you look at Tufts, you're looking at very strong, very competitive colleges that everyone knows really, really smart people go to. And the level of acceptances that we obtain speaks to the level of preparedness. It's one more way of looking at the strength of your school. And you can do the same for highly competitive schools, which are not for slackers either when you look at Fordham, Purdue, Virginia Polytechnic, or our own University of Connecticut. So we're going to be looking at that, and another suggestion that I received is we're going to look at the rating of colleges in accordance with Barron's versus the rating of colleges with U.S. News and World Report. We're going to look and see if they're the same thing, if they look alike, so that you understand that we're comparing apples with apples and that we're giving you a statistic that has some meaning, rather than, I don't remember the last time someone got into my alma mater, which is a very small data set and not really accurate. So let's go with Barron's, and let's go with a bigger discussion, and let's look at the strength of our schools. And here to look at a couple of other strengths of our schools and things that help our students to get into these highly competitive institutions are our own Director of School Counseling,
Todd Dyer, and Michael McManus, who runs our College and Career Center. Thank you.
Members of the board, thanks for letting us talk tonight. Really appreciate it. To start off, this is just a review of our programming for the Career and College Center for this last year, and then I'm going to give you just a quick update on the Alumni Association that Ms. Laughlin has been heading this year. Before I get going, I do want to recognize Sharon Brennan. Sharon Brennan's been our consultant.
2.5 years ago, when I was making my presentation, and I must say it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And, as I get going and talk a little bit about the Career and College Center, we're going to be brief, but I just wanted to say that a big part of our success has been the team of professionals I get to work with, and that includes Sharon. And I really feel the way we've come together as a group, including Mike McManus and the other counselors, has allowed us to provide programs that are value added for our students and parents. And I'm really excited for what we're offering our kids. It is top line. We look at other schools both in the Berkshire League and even around the state. You compare to the Gold Coast, because that's where we're benchmarking our programming. We are right in there with everything that's being done. So I'm really excited for what we're doing. So this is the second year of the Career and College Center, Mike's first full year. The first off, we're going to talk a little bit about the trip to Naugatuck Valley Community College. And Mike took 20 students to the program, and he's going to point out some of the highlights of the busy day at Naugatuck Valley.
Well, for starters, we certainly did a lot of walking all over the campus. The students got to see the whole campus, and what was really great for the kids is some of the students really weren't quite sure if they wanted to go to college or not, but after this event of seeing what the school is like, it got their wheels turning as to what they were thinking about doing. Some actually really are interested in attending Naugatuck Valley. Others who weren't quite sure that they wanted to go to college are thinking about it now. So I think it's really beneficial that they were able to go to this event.
We choose Naugatuck because students that aren't sure if they want to go to school, this is a great entry point. It's a really good value for education and allows them to see themselves in that setting. And we also pick the day when the hospitality management major has their open house, so they can see what it would be like to sit there and eat their delicious food. For quite a few years, I wanted to take a group of students to the National College Fair, and we just hadn't put it together, so Mike and I worked on this year. So we were able to take 26 students to the National College Fair. It was at the Convention Center in Hartford. A beautiful building. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. Over 2,000 students were on site. Over 300 colleges were being represented, and it really gave students, our students, an opportunity to talk to the reps, to interact, to ask the questions. We had prepped them ahead of time with some typical questions you're going to ask the admission rep, made them think about the schools they're going to target, because 300 schools in an hour and a half is tough to do. You can barely get through that many schools, and so you really want to try and target it, and it's pretty outstanding. I was really excited to be a part of that. We've been working for 2 years on the career fair, and Michael is going to talk a little bit about all the things that he did to get ready. But this year we conducted a 6-12 career fair, and really a great opportunity for our students, like the engineering panel, to talk to representatives from different fields and to find out what it is about their job that they enjoy, and really get community members involved in our school as well. So it was a powerful day, and we got some great feedback. Mike, go ahead.
All right, basically I started last year. I went to Bethel Middle School's career day and tried to see how they ran there. They set up 2 different locations. They had about 30 or so different careers there. I left with a lot of ideas running through my mind after I left that day. I wanted to implement at the school here. I spoke with Todd, Samantha Steinis, and Kim Gallo and the rest of the staff about what I wanted to bring to the school for the kids as far as a career fair. So we were able to get about 30 or so different careers here. The students were able to see a brief glimpse of what it's like in the world of work, get their wheels turning as far as what they might want to do later on once they graduate from Chicago. So the students, we had really high feedback from the students, so we're really excited and can't wait to set it up in the coming year.
Right, and we have some takeaways from the students. We did a survey after what they liked, what they didn't like, what they wanted us to change. And we're going to use those to improve it even for next year. So for year one, it was awesome. I was so happy that we came together. Mike has been involved in our 6th grade developmental guidance program, so he has been the instructor on Mondays. 1 day a week, one of the counselors goes down to WPS, and so Mike takes over the lesson on Monday for the 6th graders and does career inventories, also works with our career cruising program to help the students understand themselves a bit more as they're building into the next steps, thinking about what their future might be, where they connect with their interests as they go forward. Junior Job Shadow, and this is from the school newspaper. So this is a picture of Jackie Dorwald, Jackie, and she went to the Hearst Tower in New York City. And so this was featured in our school newspaper. The article obviously was continued on from page 2. But I thought the picture really spoke about our Junior Job Shadow program, what it means to get out and do a day on site in our business, and the takeaway of what that is, both going to a strange place, meeting new people, and seeing what they actually do at work. Because sometimes students have a vision of what work is that's different than the reality. And so our Junior Job program really highlights that, allows students to experience that world of work. And many of them come away with, yes, that's exactly what I want to do. But some say, maybe it's not what I thought, and I may look at other places. This is Mike's one of primary jobs to set these up. And it's a lot of work, a lot of phone calls, making sure everything's set, figuring out the day of, who our contacts are. And I like that Mike is in charge of that because he's doing that along with the career fair and really building a huge contact base. Second year of our college admission panel, and this is a premier program for sure. Having the admission reps, and you can see the schools that are represented there, come and talk to our students. And this year we expanded it to include grade 8, because I think having 8th graders see admission reps, hear from them what it is that they're looking for, is sometimes a great setup for what they may want to do in terms of building their resume or get the pieces of the admission packet together in a timely fashion. And I don't think grade 8 is too soon. Case in point, I was going through the questions our students had developed in the advisory panel, and my 4th grader's like, Dad, what are you doing? I'm like, well, we're deciding on which questions we may have the panel ask or answer. And she said, oh, let me help. And this was my 4th grader. Now she's interesting to me, that she's interested in those kinds of things. But I found that she really was into it. And for me, that brought a new light to this picture, and it makes me think about the future. When is too young for our kids to start thinking about what the next steps are? What is college? What it will mean to me? I'm not quite ready for 4th grade yet, but definitely 8th grade we thought was a good fit. So throughout the year, with Mike and the other counselors, we have put on a number of programs and other workshops, and they've really been value added. Our kids have gotten a lot out of them, and our parents as well, and I'm really proud of what we're doing. You can see just a sampling of some of them there. New one this year was the college admissions and the collegiate athlete, and that was a really nice night where you got to hear firsthand from a D1 athlete that went through the process, got to reflect on what it was like. Her mother also came to talk, and as a parent, what is it like to have a D1 athlete? The trials and tribulations that go on with that, the admission process, being recruited. So that was nice, and we invited area schools, and we had parents and students come from area schools to attend. And it was really a great night. So that's sort of a summary, a quick glimpse of what our programming was from this year. As we look at next year, we're going to continue to deliver high-impact programming. We are going to utilize a lot of the data that we got back from students and parents, the surveys that we've done. We do a pre- and post-survey at every event. At this point, parents are like, is this a quiz? I'm like, no, there's no grade. We're just interested to see what your feedback is so we can improve our program. We're going to plan college and career-related field trips. Our goal next year is to go to WestCon and hopefully get off-site to, we went to Quinnipiac with the 8th grade this year, get off-site with the 8th graders to another school, and continue to do the great things we've been doing. So thanks for your support. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I've never heard anyone, and I've been living in town since '78, ever complained, who graduated from here, parents ever complained about what school they got into. What I have heard is people who look for an excuse to defeat your budget and will say, well, they're going here, they go there, they're not going to the $50,000 schools and stuff like that. That's what I've heard, but I've never heard anybody graduating from all my years, plus being on the board, you would think, I've never heard anybody complain where they were going to do their next level of education. So I think, that's a positive. I mean, do you hear people complaining?
No, and I've talked to this, each year I come in front of you and I do a class report, and I'll do that again in the fall. And one of the things that, you mentioned, Peter, is the idea that the cost is a part of the decision. So we have admissions every year and acceptances every year that run the gamut. But at the bottom line of it, and unfortunately, this year I look at the top cost of some of our schools, and it's closer to $70,000 than it is to $60,000. And when you're in those kind of ranges of income or costs, that really can deter admission unless there's a huge package that goes along with that. So I think there's a lot of factors that go into where students end up. But our students, when they come back and talk to us, and that's actually what I'm going to talk about real quick, a soundbite about the Alumni Association, is that when they come back, they're very happy, both with what they're getting at their colleges that they chose and the Chappaqua experience that helped prepare them to be successful on site. And so that's what we hear. I don't hear as much the other side of it. So I'd just like to jump in. This is year one. Kim Laughlin is our alumni coordinator this year, and she is putting together a program. So it's new to us, and I'm excited because I get a mail from my college, I get mail from my high school. So it's definitely out there. It's definitely the way to continue that connection with your school, and it's an area that we haven't been as strong as, and I'm excited for what may happen in the future. I lost my clicker. So with that said, we have amazing alumni, and one of the things Kim has worked on this year is putting alumni in the spotlight, getting it into our regional review, into the newspaper, and bringing them back to talk to our students about what they're doing. What do they love about their school? So here's some examples, and really at this point, thank you, Mike. At this point, she's really just trying to build the database, get the connection, and get the word out. What are you doing out there? And this is a Chappaqua-ism, but it's beyond Chappaqua in celebrating alumni. But it's definitely something that she's found is that people that graduate from Chappaqua are very proud of their heritage, where they grew up, who they are as they've grown up, and the lessons they've learned here they've taken on in life. So that's what she's noticed so far. She's created an electronic database to start building the contact and getting the word out. And she's attended a number of events this year to try and solicit alumni to get connected. And so far is building that database up. So this is the online form. She hosted Alumni Return Day. That was for students a year out. So students that had just graduated to come back and talk about their experience in the fall of their freshman year and talk about the things that they would, the little bits of wisdom they'd want to share with the juniors and seniors in our school. And these are the future goals. Okay, and that's all in the packet. All right, thank you for having me.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, question.
In terms of that continuum, if I may, because I heard.
Go ahead, Susan.
In terms of the continuum of education, if alumni would be willing to share their graduation experience, did they graduate? So it's not just did Chappaqua or what percentage goes on to college, but what percentage has then gone on to complete their master's, complete their bachelor's, et cetera.
Yep.
Because it does lay a great foundation. And I think that speaks to the success of the school and the team and the student choosing the right school for them, regardless of the competitive.
If I can speak to that, we have not tracked our alumni as well as I would like.
It's just
And it
hard.
definitely is our next step is to keep in touch with our alumni in a better way, both to have them reflect more about what was the Chappaqua experience, what things stood out for you here, but also let us know how it's going in college and where you're going. What I find, and I bump into alumni because they'll get in touch with me to say, will you send me send your transcript to this school for me? Will you, I'm transferring to this school? Or I've actually seen them come back, because I've been here long enough at this point, they know who I am, they know where I live. So they come in and say, can I sit down with you and talk about the next steps, because this school isn't working out for me, or I'm thinking, I'm a sophomore or junior, and thinking maybe I want to transfer to this other major at this other school. Do you have some time? And so summer, fall, and even the spring, I have kids come in and say, not really sure. So that's been a nice connection, and keeping that door open too.
And it also gives me a chance to remind you, I'm sure you remember the Regent study that occurred. It was a longitudinal study from the class of 2004, in which Chippewa was one of the top 10 schools, high schools in the state for college completion. I look forward to the next Regent study, because I'm sure we're doing just as well, if not the top. And I think that also is a very strong message about the preparedness that comes to us. I'm glad that you said that.
I hope, this kind of thing I always wish that Ann Baldwin was here for, because this is the kind of thing that we see, that we appreciate, that even some of it is directed at us to help disseminate a perspective that may not be, living and breathing as strong as it could be in our community. So hopefully she'll watch this and maybe consider press release or something on this to really, even though we're kind of responsible for disseminating this information, to really figure out what she can do media-wise, because this is really important. This is where so much of the confusion happens sometimes. And so it is important to show how we're preparing kids for a career in college. One question that I have, because as Kim, Teresa, Pat, some people know, and Todd, I've been kind of doing this with whatever members of the community I come in contact for the last 5 or 6 years now. So I've been up on the colleges and how we rate between everything between most to all the way down to special. And what concerns me is that despite the ignorance, there's also a certain core group of naysayers. And from those, I've received responses. What I want from you is guidance on how to respond to when I present something like this that is geared towards acceptances. I get this pushback, well, acceptances, that could be one kid who applied to 12 schools and they got into all the Ivies, and then where do they go? And my usual response, usually blindsided, unfortunately, repeatedly blindsided, I should know better, that's why I'm asking you now, is, well, a lot of this has to do with economics very often. What we haven't talked about tonight, which I've noticed, is that we have a vast increase recently since the recession of not acceptances, but admissions to Naugatuck Community College. And that is because a lot of these students who, when you would look at the admissions as opposed to the acceptances, can't afford to go to these excellent universities that they're accepted in because of our economic situation now. And that they, as so many families know, well, you can do your 2 years, get an awful lot of credits out of the way at a nice, inexpensive community college, and then transfer to something more on the level of what you, at the highest level that you were accepted by. So tell me, with all that in mind, which is, you can tell is a long way around it, which doesn't necessarily hit home as efficiently as I'd like it to, how can we can't just show admissions, because admissions are not necessarily as showing the breadth of acceptances by their very nature. But how can you help us circumvent the pushback that acceptances gets in?
I think that we have to realize that we're having two different conversations. When you talk about acceptances, you are talking about the choices that students get to make. You're talking about the level of preparedness. You're talking about how much of the world does Chippewa open up to its students through preparedness. That is one conversation. When you are talking about where a student goes to school, that is a very different conversation. It has all kinds of meaning. Yes, sometimes it's economics, sometimes it's geographical, sometimes it's legacy. That and as many other reasons as I could come up with. Those are the three that are always on top of my head. But it's very important to realize and honestly to take the politics out of it. Those are two different conversations. One is about preparedness and one is about choice. And acceptances talk about preparedness, and they talk about, again, how much of the world does this school open up to its students? How many choices do they get to make? And we should celebrate those choices and not turn our noses up when they don't pick the college that makes us feel good about ourselves. It really is that simple. Yes, Greg? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wouldn't be too defensive about the issue of Ivies versus others. You know, I think the most important thing is, is your child getting into the right university for them?
Exactly.
Is it the right program?
Mhm.
If you're headed in the area of doing research, for example, in the science field, an Ivy may not be the best place for you. Not that it isn't a great place, but it might not be exactly what you need. And I think it's important to realize that. The other thing I hope that we're doing is letting kids know that there are a lot of choices out there in the country. And for those who want to go to a very prestigious, really good school with a great program, there's a whole raft of public Ivies, schools they call public Ivies, which are schools that are in that level of education, but cost a fraction of the amount. And there are actually public Ivies out there that cost less or the same for an out-of-state student in that school as UConn charges for an in-state student. So before you immediately rush off to UConn, which is a great university, you have options that are not going to break the bank. And I think that people need to look at those. And I think what's really more important is, where are you in 10 years? Where are you in 20 years? Have you achieved what you wanted to achieve? Not, did we get into this marquee university or that marquee university? Because it might be a mistake.
You're absolutely right, Greg. I had a conversation with two parents recently, both of whom visited the same school with their children. And one of the children, I shouldn't say children, these are 18-year-old kids, one of the young folks, went off to this university, and they pulled into a parking space, and this digital sign lit up and said, Greg Kava is here, something like that. And this student thought, this is the coolest thing ever. This really excited me. These people really welcomed me. And the second student pulled up into that space and saw her name and thought, gee whiz, why are they wasting all their money on that? Does anybody study around here? There's a couple of different things that are behind that. But I love that story because from two different parents who have a very similar background and are both from here, they had a very different take on those colleges. So that's why I try to stress, how much of the world do we open up to these kids? How many choices do they get because of their level of preparedness? And then they make that choice. We've educated them, we've brought them to that point, but that's really a point where they break off with their families and they make their decision with a lot of stuff that isn't any of our business.
Well, I think that's a great observation, because my older daughter went to a university that was quite large. It was between students and faculty, there was 60,000 people there, and yet she was in a very small school within that university. And the day she arrived, there were parades of people out greeting her. She didn't have to even no one was allowed to carry one thing into her dormitory. I mean, and the point is that she was immediately shown that in a 50 to 60,000 university school, you are a small community. So all those people who are scared to death of going to a large public university don't be, because every large university has small communities, intimate communities within it. And I think people need to find the place that's going to work for them the best, and stop looking at I've got to go to a tiny place, I've got to go to a large place. Where do you see yourself? Where do you belong? And recognize that there's more there than necessarily meets the eye. I think it's great stuff.
Thank you.
Well, I do think it's very important to see where kids are admitted or accepted, and where they ultimately go is their own personal decision, because that says a lot about us. But I think Alan brought up a good point, is that a lot of kids nowadays will do their kind of basic stuff, undergrad, first 2 years, in schools that are convenient and perhaps less expensive, and then transfer. And you're going to miss that transfer information, because it's all cumulative experience, Chicago to that middle school, as it were, and then to their final 2 years in school or grad school. I think mining the alum is the best commercial for the school, because we all know of alum that are out in the world. I mean, we had a kid in Nepal, you know? I mean, and please God, he's back now. I don't know, he's kind of lost in transit, but I mean, we have kids everywhere doing absolutely fascinating things. And I'd like to know where they ultimately got a degree, if they got a degree, how their military service panned out, what are they doing in business? That's your big commercial.
Awesome. That's a great thought.
Michelle? Go ahead.
I just wanted to, in my former life, I remember the National Clearinghouse. Sharon, do you know about that? Can you kind of just tell people about what that is? Because maybe we need to join that. I think that would help us.
It's actually what Kim was talking about.
Yeah.
That was how many years ago? That was in the newspaper. The National Student Clearinghouse is a not-for-profit that colleges belong to and feed data into the National Clearinghouse. It started off years ago when colleges need to figure out when students transferred if they had received financial aid at other institutions, because that's a federal issue. And so they collected a lot of data. Well, what ended up happening is admissions offices figured out it was really helpful for them to get that data because they could find out if a student applies to 10 colleges, college admissions people want to know where they lost their applicants to. In other words, we accepted 5,000 students, 2,000 enrolled. Well, where did the other 3,000 go? They want to know who their competitors are. So that's how it started. Then it spread to the high schools because then it was clear that they could use the data that they were collecting to let high schools know what happened to the students that left their high schools and went off to college. Did they graduate from the college that they went to? If they didn't, where did they transfer to? And did they graduate eventually and from where? And the newspaper article that Kim's referring to, the Board of Regents actually purchased a National Clearinghouse search and looked at school districts in Connecticut, and they were posted in a local newspaper. And so individual school districts can participate for a relatively small fee. We talked about it when you were at Bethel.
Yes, we'll do.
And I think it's really important information to come back to the district because it's the only way you'll really know where your students ended up. And they do know. Now, this is interesting. It's the National Student Clearinghouse does a 6-year graduation rate. They don't even look at 4 because so many students do not finish at 4 for a variety of reasons. So they look at a 6-year, and Chippewa did very well. They were very, very high in the ratings in that newspaper article. I think the only ones that beat you were Richfield.
That's right.
That would be great.
Yep, our only competitors were on the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
But Alan, that would give you a lot of the information. That would be a lot of information you're looking for. So you can get me there now.
Michelle?
I have just a clarifying question and then a comment. So on the sheet that you gave us, I want to make sure I'm reading it right, because usually on the report that we get, we see the acceptances. So it's like this huge number of 200.
Because it's every school to
Right.
which students were accepted, that's right.
So for example, across one line, it says the number of graduates, 2010, the first line is 76, and it says number most competitive 6. So does that mean 6 different students got into at least one most
That's right.
competitive? It's not 6 applications
That's
from
right.
maybe 2
You
people?
take that 6 and you put it onto the report that we give to you, which is all the acceptances, and you'd see a whole column of institutions. But if we did that with percentages, frankly, it would be cooking the books.
Right.
Because kids are admitted to more than one institution. So we deliberately did that differently.
Right.
Rather than seeing the breadth of all the institutions, 6 kids got into the most competitive schools. An average of 8.8% of our students over 5 years got into the most competitive schools. You look at a bell curve, we're right there. We're doing an awesome job.
That's actually a good answer.
It's
to
a
the
strong
question I brought up
statistic.
before.
Right.
It's a strong
It's a cleaner,
statistic, that's right.
cleaner answer.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we just wanted to.
And typically, when we do the report in the fall, I've always done it with just a listing of the schools.
Mhm.
I haven't disaggregated the data this way. So this is really a different way of looking at the data, and those are unique students. So those numbers represent unique students. There's multiple acceptances typically from that. And so we would take 14 of the colleges on that list and then figure out uniquely who were the students and then how many were in each class
That's
that
great.
gained acceptance.
That's
Yep.
fantastic. The only other thing I was going to say, a comment, or the thing that I come across when I'm talking to people who are looking at our list, and I'm finding it myself, is that there's so many colleges out there, and there are many colleges on the most and highly competitive schools that I've never heard of. So making sure every time we communicate about our college acceptances, somehow designating, because people might not really, just because it's not, one of the big names that we all know, it doesn't mean it was just as hard to get into, so.
That's right.
So that's kind of like an education piece.
And using Barron's levels that playing field, because that is a nationally, recognized organization. This is not just Kim decided what the best schools were. This is a national rating that happens across the country, so we're comparing apples with apples, and we're doing it in a way that gives you a strong statistic.
Right, so I think whether we put it in the newspaper or like in the Region in Review, it was just a list of colleges, which is great. But I didn't recognize a lot of those, and a lot of them were probably very competitive colleges. So making sure we, like every time we put in that little education piece about most and highly competitive, maybe. I mean, that's maybe it's not appropriate every time, but that's what we're fighting. Right?
Oh yeah, I got a subscription to Barron's just to do this, and who knew that Paul Smith's college was most competitive? I mean, that's exactly
Right, where's that?
Just have a clarification on this as well. When someone is accepted by most competitive and highly competitive, do they go into the most competitive column, or do they go into both?
I'm sorry?
When one person applies to a most competitive and a highly competitive institution, and they're accepted by both, do they go into the most competitive column, or do they go into the highly competitive column, or do they go into both?
No, we're saying if Todd gets into a highly competitive and a most competitive, do we count him in both columns, or do we count him in the higher column?
I didn't do that part of the data, I only did the first one.
Okay, I'll find that out for you. I honestly don't know that answer. It is unique. It is unique, and if somebody asked me what to do, I'd say put them in the higher column and let it go. But you're right.
We'll find out.
You might also want to just internally track the Green Skies colleges and other public IVs just to see how you do, because I can think of, just based on what I know of kids' schools they've gotten into, you have at least 6 admissions to those that I know of for the class of 15. So I'm sure you've done, and I know at least 2 or 3 from the class of 14. So, and that's a very highly selective group. I haven't really studied the data for Barron's, because I don't know whether, there's a lot of colleges that turn down an awful lot of high percentage of the kids that apply there. When kids are submitting 30 applications to college, the system has been skewed.
Yes.
Something fierce. Yes. And so I think you have to look, because I'm telling you, some of the colleges that I see in the most competitive and highly competitive group, I have...
Don't do it, Trey. Don't do it. We're on a roll here.
I have no knowledge of them. And,
okay.
and
Fair
it
enough.
Could be that things have changed, but I just don't know whether it's because they're very selective, because they don't admit. But I think that's something to keep an eye on. But if you cross-reference a couple of different sources, I think you're going to zero in on it. You're going to see the enormous quality that's really there.
You're right.
And that's why I thought you might look at that.
You're right. That is,
And
we actually
agree.
did look at that, and that's a great point. When we're going to do that.
I was getting around to it. Sorry about that.
I thought you were going with
No,
it. Really all that competitive. I was going to kill you.
No. They are. A lot of them are.
Right.
Okay.
Peter?
Just a point, we had 3 children, all went to school here, and one of the ways we got our kids into the college of their choice was by using junior college. We felt that coming from this area, throwing a kid into a very competitive college was the possibility of blowing $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 the first year and making that adjustment and transition. And we found out by finding what junior college, we went to the main college, what school they would recommend to transfer grades. And 2 of our 3 children went to junior college and walked right in to the college of their choice. We used that as the avenue to get to without risking a large sum of money the first year and kissing it off. And we found that worked very well. That was just a thought.
And we're finding at this point, students are either using Naujak Valley or WestCon as that exact same plan. Because by living at home and community to WestCon, you're paying about $8,000 versus $22,000. And then if you go to Naujak Valley, you're in the $3,700, without just tuition. So the cost difference can be a huge factor. Plus, if you do the education right, it goes right, you can transfer that right over. So that is definitely in these economic times a choice for a lot of families.
All right. Anything else? These folks? Todd and Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, 7.3, pre-K study. Teresa DeBrito, Allison Hunter. Welcome, ladies.
Good evening, everyone. Allie and I are going to present to you the study that we conducted. This is in response to the third classroom for the REACH program. And we did have a process that I'd like to explain before we hand out the packet. We definitely met with Don and the principals and the bus company and looked at all aspects of preparation for this third class. And we looked at all 3 elementary schools as options. And so we're going to pass out this packet now so that we can present the information to you. If you turn to the first page in the packet, the information on this page is specific to adding a class at Booth Free School. So when we met with Don, we talked about the necessities for Booth Free to make it an equitable placement. And we would need a single classroom with age-appropriate playground access, which would cost approximately $54,000. Specific details, we would need to have some modifications to a restroom so that the sink and the toilet would be appropriately sized for 3- and 4-year-olds, and that cost is approximately $4,000. There is already a sink in the classroom that would support this setting, and so there was no cost there. And the playground would be the significant cost of $50,000. And they do have furniture and felt that no additional furniture would be needed for that particular school.
So I talked with Pam Newton about our transportation needs, and it was a little tricky to figure out exactly how to determine who goes to what building, or who goes to what classroom. So the way transportation was determined, the last 12 students that were waitlisted, or the last 12 in, would be offered that classroom, that extra classroom. So of those 12 students, 8 of the families selected that they would like transportation. And then in all of these, in this scenario, there would be representation from all 3 towns because the last 12 students in were from all 3 towns. So in the transportation, in figuring out the transportation, you're getting a map. You have to hold it up and down like this. Sorry, that doesn't help a lot, but Washington's on the top there, 06794, right? And you'll notice that you have a variety of shapes. You have a triangle up in that right-hand corner. You have a sort of a square, diamond off to the side of that. And you have 2 more awkwardly shaped routes down below. And you'll notice way off to the left you have a singleton. Okay? So the singleton we're not even going to really consider. It's a special situation going on for a student that we really don't need to discuss. But when you look at this map, you'll see that there are highlighted pink dots. So the pink dots represent students and where they're located all over the district. The highlighted pink dots represent the last 8 students in and where they live. So you'll notice that there are students in all areas. You'll also notice that there are some students, when you notice the section in Roxbury where there's a clump of 8 dots, that's the children's station. And there are 4 dots that would be going to Washington, to Mr. Weymouth or Mrs. Westcott's class, and then there are 4 dots that would be traveling to the new placement, wherever we put it. So you'll notice that if you were to have all 3 classrooms in one building, you'll notice that you have 4 buses with one singleton van. So what we did was we didn't begin to map out what it would look like for the route, but you can notice that at the top quadrant of your map, that would be a bus, the 2 dots. And then you'll notice the bottom section of your graph would be another additional bus, because we couldn't, that route with all the dots would be an hour and a half long. So we couldn't have an hour and a half bus route for a preschool. So there would be 2 additional buses if you're putting the program anywhere but Washington, okay? So it's hard to believe, because when I thought about it, how would there be additional buses? But as you look at this, these are the last 8 students in where they live. And you'll notice that if we had to put other buses in, there would be crisscrossing. So you'll notice that there would be a bus going to Children's Station to bring students to Washington, and there would be a bus going to Children's Station to bring them to wherever the 3rd classroom is as well. And up top, you'll see that there are 2 buses, or 2 little pink dots together. And so those also, that is 1 student that got in on the wait list, 1 student that got in ahead of time, 1 would be going to Washington, 1 would be going to the other location. So it could be 2 additional buses if the school, if the classroom was housed in Booth or Burnham School. So you have the same information on both pages of your document, but I just wanted to be able to show you the map so you could understand how spread out the students are and how we would determine where students are. You might say, why couldn't we take that group that's down below and send them off to Bridgewater or Burnham? That's a group of 12 kids, but the issue is that those students were offered either a 9 to 2 spot at the preschool, or they want to remain with their teachers that they had the last year. Okay, so those, the new, or the highlighted dots are those last group in, and that was the best way we could figure out how to do this. Parents were offered a position in either Mr. Weymouth or Mrs. Westcott's class. The students that were on the wait list would be the natural group going to the new classroom. So that's the best way we figured it out. Okay, so the benefits to having it at Booth Free School is you obviously will have additional enrollment, and the benefit and the opportunities for the older students to work with the younger students. I mean, I think that's a real added benefit to anywhere where you put the students, is that leadership that comes out in our older students to support our preschoolers. So I do think no matter where you put this classroom, the benefit to the other students in the building is just immense. So that's an important piece. The challenges that we found in talking to staff would be that there would be limited opportunities. So there are 2 teachers that would be working together, collaborating, planning, strategizing, working closely with each other on a daily, sometimes hourly basis. And then there would be someone somewhere else that might be on their, not certainly on their own, obviously other teachers there to collaborate with, but not other preschool teachers to collaborate with. So that's one challenge. The other piece is a lot of often my preschool teachers have to participate in PPTs, or they have to be a part of a birth to 3 transition meeting, or they have to be a part of some testing that we're doing for current students at our private schools or in district. And so they would, we find coverage for them. Often that means that they will take, some of the time in the afternoon, and they'll do some work outside of the district, whether it be the testing or the PPTs, and then like staff that have had training with little, with 2 and 3, we do get students that are 2-9, so we are starting the year with, 2-year-olds. Like staff is available for them to access for support. If they need to leave, then a classroom teacher next door can cover their 6 kids that are left for the extended day portion, someone that has that training. Certainly, there are a lot of special education teachers that are certified pre-K to 12. I'm one of them. I have no experience in that level. I'm not sure I'd be your best choice for a preschool teacher. So I think having experienced people right there on site with you, so that when you have to go to a PPT or have to go do some testing for someone, you have that support to take over. So that was an important piece that the team made me aware of as well. More travel time for therapists. And I know that they travel throughout the district, but you have to understand that by adding an additional class, we're adding additional services. And if they're moving from 2 classes in Washington to another building, there is time. It takes time to get to different places. Sharing and rotating of materials. So what happens is we buy a set of something often, and Mr. Weymouth or Mrs. Westcott may use it for 6 weeks, and then they'll mention to the other one, we're done with the doctor set. Do you want the doctor set, or do you want to rotate it back to the storage? And so they rotate materials. So they're always having new learning experiences for our students. So to have it off-site would just mean probably me or a courier driving materials to and from when things are rotated through. We do have the opportunity now, because our preschool is in one site, to have flexible grouping. So if Mr. Weymouth or Mrs. Westcott want to say flip-flop and say, you take all the 3-year-olds today, I want to do this particular activity with them, you take the 4-year-olds, or if they want to say, can you give me a group that still doesn't have the letters of their name down pat, and we'll do some sensory activities or motor activities around, letters and sand and letters and shaving cream and those kind of things. They can group students based on what they know and the data that they have about students. So that would be lacking if that other person was sort of off on their own. We have a motor room that's dedicated right now to preschool equipment at Washington Primary. Some of the equipment is quite large, so we would, depending on where students ended up, in the future potentially need to purchase some additional motor equipment that wouldn't be able to be moved. A lot of our things could be shifted, our materials that we could drive over, certain kits, but some of the motor equipment, the swings, the bigger things couldn't be. And so some of the items are particularly purchased for the size of a preschooler, and those are currently at WPS. And then, obviously we're going to have to relocate in all of our school placements, wherever we're putting a classroom. And so in this instance, we would be relocating an art class at Booth.
If you turn the page, the next page has the information for a location at Burnham School. Similar format. A single classroom with age-appropriate playground would be approximately $52,000 at Burnham. Some of the details involve removing existing toilet, adding age-appropriate fixture for the cost of approximately $2,000. We do have an existing restroom in that particular classroom, and that means that one restroom would be shared between the boys and girls. And regarding the playground, the cost there as well is approximately $50,000. The furniture is already there, so we felt that classroom would not need additional furniture.
Again, the same scenario with the busing. When you look at this map again, same scenario with needing 2 additional buses. We saw the same benefits, an additional enrollment, additional opportunities for older students to be leaders and to support our younger students. And again, the same challenges related to it, except this time we're relocating a music classroom.
And the last page of the packet is specific to Washington Primary School, where the current 2 other classes of REACH are. The additional classroom would cost approximately $22,144. And the details there, again, are restroom modifications so that the toiletry and the fixtures are age appropriate for the students. And that would be approximately $4,000. To add a sink into the classroom would be approximately $4,100. There already is an age appropriate playground at Washington Primary, but the furniture for the classroom would be necessary, and this was in Allie's previous presentation at a previous board meeting, and so we carried over that dollar amount of $14,044.
And then as you notice on your map, so we have our 4 buses outlined in blue. Our buses can hold about 12 students with appropriate harnesses, so that's why the bus routes are the size that they are. So there will be 4 buses necessary for the additional classes at WPS. The reason that this little square over here, or diamond, or kite, whatever you want to call that, is so small is that is a run that comes back from Montessori school and picks up those 4 students on the back end of their Montessori trip, okay? So you might say, why couldn't we get everybody on that one bus? That is a separate bus traveling to Montessori, and they will grab students on the way coming back in for Montessori in that area of town. So benefits and just there'll be support for the new teacher. Not that I know that there'll be a new teacher. Perhaps it's quite a veteran teacher that will take that position. But just nice to have additional preschool teachers that are doing the same thing as you are there to sort of show you the ropes. They'll have to certainly learn about the district and the school in general and just sort of the processes and protocols that we put in place for our preschool. So just there'll be some support on site for them. There'll be a similar support team with similar training. So our 2 paras that work with our 3-year-old to 5-year-old population are there. So when we have PPTs, we can rely on their support. When we have certain events, we can make the groups, bring our groups from other classrooms into one classroom to work with each other so that there is that support team that has a very similar background and experience to preschool. There won't be any additional travel time for therapists as they'll move from one classroom to the next. They each give us an hour a week center for each classroom. Obviously, the same benefit goes to the additional enrollment and the same benefit to the older students being able to have the opportunity to work with our preschoolers. The sharing and the rotating materials will be easier. They'll be able to shift them from classroom to classroom as opposed to having to get them across district. They'll be able to have flexible student grouping based on a variety of different data points. And they'll also, that shared motor equipment is there for anyone who needs it. The challenge is that in Washington Primary, we'll have to relocate a motor room and find a new spot for that.
A couple of questions. The first is, what is a motor room?
A motor room is where our occupational therapists and physical therapists have equipment to support students and their needs.
And I have quite a few questions actually.
Well, hold on. Are you done? Why don't we let them finish their presentation and we can ask questions? I don't know if they're done.
Well, I think I'm done. I'm willing to answer questions. I think, in reviewing this, I think the right recommendation, and I know you guys will just make the decision, but I do think that there's many more educational benefits to having it all in one location. So that is sort of in summary how we feel.
What is your recommendation for that one location?
Washington Primary School, where the other two classrooms are.
Valerie?
So, and these little pink dots are everyone now that is presently enrolled that we know are going to be enrolled.
No, these are children that are enrolled that would like transportation.
Yes. Yep. And I see that there's a whole forest of baby dots, probably in that, is it on 67, is it that?
That's the
little
children's
community
station.
there?
That's the children's station.
Okay, thank you. The expense of the playground confuses me. Do not tell me, please, that we spent $50,000 on that little pre-K playground at WPS.
Well,
Did we?
I met with Don, and that was a quote that he had shared with us.
Because that's a sad little thing. I mean, honestly, but the more
That's a super
important question is,
Ellie thinks it's a super playground.
It's a super pre-K.
well, I'm not seeing $50,000. I am seeing a state-of-the-art, multi-age group playground at Burnham that exists. And
the size
my
of
experience with Booth is a little less, certainly, but
The key is age appropriate, right?
Yeah, no, the playground at Burnham is excellent. It's phenomenal, but it's not appropriate for the size body that our students have.
well, we did dedicate $147,000 to this venture.
Yep.
And I think we have a unique opportunity here to balance the district a bit better. And either locate this extension. I really think that if parents had this option of having their little ones closer to home in Bridgewater and Roxbury, it would be an excellent opportunity for those parents and those kids. I mean, certainly it makes no sense to have your 3-year-old go to Washington and your 6-year-old go to their home school in Burnham. I mean, if we're going to expand it, I am all for bringing it to one of the other 2 towns this year to see how it works. I know we're going to put money into making this happen, but I'm seeing only opportunity here. And as you say, the great teaching ability, teaching moment of older kids and very young kids under the same roof. That suddenly your first grader feels like they're old and mature and can show that little 3-year-old what's going on. I mean, that's invaluable.
Correct.
I think we have a unique opportunity here if we stay within a $147,000 budget, which seems to be possible.
Well, this doesn't count the teachers with para, right? These
Well,
costs.
you're gonna do that anyway. I mean, you're
Well,
gonna do
that
that as WPS.
But that was part of the 147,000.
Right. But I mean, no matter what.
It was 125,000
Some
of
of those
the.
expenses will be perhaps increased to do this, but some of those expenses might be worthwhile as long as we stay in the 147. And I do think we're gonna have a lot more parents saying, yeah, I'd like these kids closer to home. Why ship them all to WPS?
You know, Valerie, if people have questions for the ladies, we can ask questions, then we can debate them.
I did both.
Okay, thanks. Michelle?
I was economical.
I was just wondering, why no furniture was needed for the other 2 schools?
Well, they both have smart boards in the location where we would be going, and they both have, right now Burnham has a classroom where the kindergarten used to be that would have materials, so we could always take that and shift within district over to Booth if we decided on a different location. So there are probably a couple of things on the list that I gave you the last time. We talked about the bulk of that was a smart board at $5,000. There were desktop computers which are already present at Burnham, which could be shifted to Booth if need be. So there was a thought that you could move things within district. There are equipment there appropriate to the size of preschoolers. So the $14,000 was something I gave you at the last, I guess, certainly back before the budget was approved, and it was accounting for tables, chairs, book displays, art easels, bikes, desktop, smartboard, and so they do have a lot of that equipment already there. They don't have, a laptop and an iPad, but I sort of felt at that point that I could add those back in, which would probably be,
I'm just wondering
another $2,000.
if that furniture's not being used at the other 2 schools, that can't come to WPS either?
Well, there are classrooms in there right now. You see, you've got a music
Music is being
classroom
used.
and you've got an arts classroom. So if the preschool went to one of those, if the pre-K classroom went to one of those 2 schools, that would be then used for the pre-K students, and the other teachers would be displaced, right? The music teacher would be displaced, having to have class in the gym, and the art teacher would be. So do you see that right now those classrooms are being?
I was thinking that these must be age specific, small little desks or something. I didn't.
They're tables.
Wouldn't
They're
be
tables.
in the art room, right? Well, I don't know. I was just trying to figure out. I don't need to figure out how you rearrange the furniture, but I just didn't understand why.
There might be some ability to share.
Okay.
There still might be some ability to share with Mrs. Colella. We might be able to talk to her and figure out a way to share if we don't have the resources to get the furniture. But we did speak the last time about some additional supplies that the team, the school would need in order to set up a classroom there, without having considered at that point that we could potentially share from other schools. We had done that without considering that.
And we don't want to present a different number
Than we had
what
presented
Ally
last
had already
time.
presented.
Yeah.
Greg?
So I have a few questions, but I just want to understand this. What you are telling us here with these numbers of 54,000 for Booth, 52 for Burnham, is that is the additional cost onto the program costs of 147,000. So if you do it at Burnham, it's 199,000, and if you do it at Booth, it's 200,000.
It's not complete because there are 2 additional buses on top of those.
Plus the buses.
Right.
Plus the buses. So you're probably looking, if it's 2 buses, you're probably looking at something close to 300,000 to do it at either school.
But a bus is, Pam didn't give me numbers, but a bus is not $150,000, right? It's about $50,000.
Well, I understand that, but if you need 2 extra buses at 45 to 50 each, that's $100,000. So in other words, the cost of doing this at Washington Primary is the 147, because this 14 was included in the
Yes.
original 147.
Right.
So from a cost perspective, doing it at Washington Primary is 147, and doing it at either of the other two schools is somewhat, and that included the bus too, the 147.
Yes, because it's currently 4
Right.
buses.
Right, so that the cost of doing it at either of the other two schools is $300,000, i.e. twice the price of what it would cost to do that. Let me ask you one other question here. And
Question or statement?
Go ahead, Greg.
I'll ignore that. I'm not as efficient as you
Keep
that
it
way.
down.
I just want to understand this. When you say that you're going to have to if you do it at Burnham or you do it at Booth, you're having to displace classes that are being taught there?
We have to do that at Washington too, though.
What do you
The
displace?
motor room.
We're moving the motor room.
The room to a much smaller location. It's not like a classroom setting, you're right, but it is used by the special education teachers when students need it.
Okay, at the other two schools, you're displacing two classes.
Right.
And
But they would go, and in talking to Mrs. Colella, so the class would then, let's say we displace music, then art and music would share the room, and she'd have to alternate on which days she could, receive the art teacher and the music teacher. So she would alternate that.
Okay, and
Okay.
if you did it at Burnham? or
Much
that-
the same,
that's Burnham?
much the same.
Much the same.
Much the same.
Thank you.
This is, the cost for this is with the current costs or charges in place for the preschool program and transportation gratis. But as I remember a conversation that we had previously, we were going to take a fresh look at how much we're charging for preschool, right? Because we all agree that it's dirt cheap and we throw in transportation. So for the following year, not this coming year. So the region may take, it will inherently perhaps cost a little more, but there is a value to balancing the region. When you look at these, bus routes and where kids are. So that's something to consider in terms of where to place it, because once we expand the preschool program, we're not looking at moving it around from year to year. Where it expands is where it may very well stay.
No, because we don't know if every year we'll need that extra class. So this year we're saying 3 classes, next year there may only be 2 classes. So that's, that can't be, a finite answer.
I guess too, the question is that, again, obviously I think we need to address the issue of raising the price, and so taking a hit this year, but for the future, but, I keep hearing, to increase the program, but for me, part of the program is that it's a full program. So if you divide the program up, then it's not full, and then how attractive is that? And I'm not saying that it needs to be, I'm just saying that what I'm hearing is the benefit is that they all be together, for the teachers and for the students. And in order for it to be attractive, we want it to be a full program. So if we're doing this to fill a school versus what we're doing for the best of the students, the children and the teachers, we have to really look at that. That's what I'm hearing. I don't want to do it for the wrong reasons, I want to do it for the right reasons.
Okay, what's exactly the point? Are we looking to take a vote on something tonight, or is this just an informational component of our meeting?
It's up to the board. I don't think the vote's required, but it's up to the board. Yes.
One of the things that you asked my staff to do is to research so that you would have the information to make, so we could make an informed decision. I was not involved in this process because I wanted to have people who could be unbiased, do the research, and present the data. They've presented the data. I support them. I believe our administrative team believes it should be at Washington Primary School for all of the reasons that have been addressed, because it's what is best for the students. And if you don't want that, then I guess you have to take a vote to tell us not to do that.
So someone has to put a motion on the floor to change what would be a proposal of status quo.
Yes. Yeah, I just have a couple questions as to how this was arrived at. Originally, the playground wasn't mentioned, and I am confused as to how there is a, when was the $50,000 playground built at WPS? 'Cause
I don't know if it's a $50,000
no,
playground.
whatever is age appropriate at WPS, I don't even know how, where was it?
It's a separate.
It's where the
It's where the kindergarten was.
It's the doors outside, it's outside.
Well, I know, but I mean, how did it get there?
You gone there?
I'm sorry?
You know how the playground got there?
Well,
Hold on, please.
I'm waiting for you to ask a specific question.
Okay, yeah, where did this age-appropriate playground at WPS come from?
It had been
It had been there.
before my time. I've been here for 5 years in this
So, so there was an appropriate 2 to 3 year old playground at WPS for some reason before there was.
The kindergarten playground was there, outside of the reach rooms.
Right, so that's a kindergarten playground.
Right.
So it's age appropriate being kindergarten.
Well, there's equipment that they can fit on, the students will fit on, yes.
Right, but I can hear you. I'm confused about the fact that there's a kindergarten at Burnham, so there's obviously age appropriate equipment for a kindergartner at Burnham already, and a booth, right?
Well, I think it would be very different from, having spent a lot of time at Burnham this year, I don't know that playground is appropriate for 2 9s and 3s and 4s. And even 5s, I think.
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
Great playground, super.
Oh, yeah, I know, but that's what I'm getting confused about, because it was built as a K-5 playground.
Okay, so this is pre-K, and I'm not sure exactly, I don't know who built it, when they built it, and how much it cost when they built it, but this is what our students use right now and are very successful on.
Right, but I can't understand how WPS happens to have a pre-K playground there, since up until Reach moved there 2 years ago, there was no pre-K there. So how is it that playground that's in existence at WPS, which was built on a K-5 school campus, is age appropriate, but the one at Booth and Burnham that were also built on K-5 campuses without pre-K classes somehow isn't?
I think the question is, the kindergarten, and I don't know to what specifications what is what, but I do know that it's fenced in, only little students use it, and they can't climb on anything that's inappropriate for them to be on. So you have to think about that too. The spider web is the super coolest thing in the world, and I've been on it. It's really cool, but it's not okay for the 2, 3s, and 4s, and they're gonna try to climb it, right? Because who wouldn't? I mean, I climbed it.
Okay, so that kind of makes sense. In other words, if I recall,
yes.
WPS
There's more than one playground at WPS.
That's the thing, so you can have them segregated.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's fenced in, and they can only go in there. And there's
more dangerous fun for older kids.
Way in the back.
Outside. Okay, so that is an important point.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you were thinking it was all the same, and
No,
it's not,
and-
it's totally separate.
Okay. I can still hear you. It's still suffering. So the next question I have is about the buses. It's funny how you would think that of all these people, I know that you selected for the additional classes the 12 that are on the wait list. And I know that a lot of people have already been promised a certain situation at WPS. But you would think if any of those people were in Roxbury or Booth or closer to them in Washington, Booth or Burnham or closer to them in Washington, that they would welcome the news and want to be able to switch, but you didn't do that.
Well, interestingly, we had calls after it was approved here that there'd be an additional class with parents saying, you're not going to take me out of the class that, they don't know which classroom they're in yet, but they just wanted to know that they wouldn't be impacted and moved somewhere other than where they were, they assumed they were going. So we did have those calls, and so there were 6 students that didn't sign up for, 6 remaining students that weren't part of this group that were from Bridgewater and Roxbury, that I could have called and said to them, would you prefer to go this route or that route? Because in my thinking, the 9 to 2 program is going to remain at Washington Primary, where it's been. And I didn't want to create stress or angst around parents because I've had more than one call saying, you're not gonna move my kid here or there, are you? So I just didn't, because the moment you call somebody and say, we're just investigating, it's out on Facebook or emails or phone calls, and then I get more. So
Right.
I made the decision not to call those 6 families to say, that are signed up for 9 to 12. I didn't call them to say, would you prefer or not prefer, just because I knew we had received several calls saying, now with the changes that we've added to classroom, you're not going to adjust. So I made that decision not to do that.
Yeah, and were the people who called you who were worried, were they primarily Washington residents? Or?
I had a variety of people call.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the thing, is you would assume the people who were close to WPS who were happy there, they would call and go, "Bleh," whereas the other people might be happy to hear about it. But
What-
it wasn't that cut and dried, I guess. In other words, the people who called were not the.
I'm going to stay with Mr. Weymouth, right?
Okay.
I'm going to stay
So-
with Mrs. Westcott, right? My son
Okay.
loves him. I don't want another transition. So
Right.
that was the kind of
And that's
conversations we've
important.
had.
That's an important.
Right.
And that was more important than where they lived,
Yeah.
Right, to the families, because
Yeah.
you're talking about multiple transitions in multiple
and
years.
their kids being happy where they are.
See, this is the tricky thing about this, because I do appreciate this. As you know, it's very clear that I am advocating for the reach extension to be at Burnham because of the benefit to Roxbury and Bridgewater parents and families to have their kids closer to them. But I do appreciate the administrative aspects of having it unified. I know that collaboration happens in this district with 3 elementary schools, but obviously everyone likes to be, next door to each other, and that makes it better. My concern is in the seeing both sides of this, knowing the transitional aspect of this. You're going to deal with people who want to be in a certain teacher's classroom because of another transition, and then people who are going to want to keep the morning or the afternoon and not have to change. But how do you look further down the road and think of children who would want to be closer to home for longer, or Burnham kids or Booth kids who could stay in their area and not transition from WPS back down to Booth or Burnham later? So that's a transition that they're already having, which would continue. That may not have to continue for some kids. That's a long-term prospect. Whereas I also appreciate the short-term prospect is not having somebody from, deep in Roxbury and Bridgewater who's used to a certain wonderful teacher location, who the transition would be difficult now because they're there. Is there a stomach for, I guess as I said, I really feel that this is beneficial to have something that deals with small kids in more than one area.
And I think that's an important piece too, and it's sort of, the way I view it is, it lends to needing them all in one place, because I want to be able to make a decision about which classroom I'm putting a student in based on what the student needs. And so some of our teachers have very specific strengths. And so if a student from Bridgewater, let's say, or from Roxbury, perhaps needs a particular style of teaching or a particular skill set that a teacher has, I want to be able to make that decision and put that student with that particular teacher, as opposed to saying, well, you live there, so you should go there. To me, it's a really important piece, particularly on the special education side of things. When I have an opportunity and I know that I have a strength in one teacher with students with autism, and I know that if a student comes that way, that this teacher has gone to extra training and has become certified and has learned certain types of evaluations to work, to share with our district. So I would hate to make a decision just because the student lives in this part of the district and should go that direction to be a little closer, but the student may be better served with that one teacher. And I think then there just becomes a level of complexity to how we're selecting who goes where, and then there's a level of sort of the opportunity for complaints and disappointments about where students are. So to me, most important when I sit down to make the lists of students and where they are is I sit with the teaching team and I learn about particularly the students that we know something about, the students we already have or the students that have special needs, or the birth to 3 students coming in, and I sit down and I figure out specifically where those students should be and who they should be with. And that's a team decision. And to say, well, because you live in this section here where the children's station is and you're going to go there, even though I think the best fit for you is to be down in Washington with that teacher. I think that becomes complicated. So for me to have them all together, aside from them being able to work together and then being able to share groups of students and to say, hey, do you have anybody not doing really well on their pre-academic skills, or do you have anybody that needs this skill to share, to flip-flop kids, to be flexible like all other teachers are flexible with groups. I think that to not have that makes it hard. And I think it makes it very complicated come lottery time about, do I have a lottery for the other program? Like, who wants to go? And how, I think there's a level of complexity here that I think we're adding to it that there doesn't need to be. And I think the best educational in the interest of the children is to have everybody together to work cohesively, to share students and group them flexibly to support their needs, and for me and the team to be able to decide who is best suited for what teacher.
But you only have 2 teachers, and talk about complexity. I'm sorry, but I'm going to be very negative about this. We don't have a consolidated elementary school system. We have 3 individual towns, 3 individual elementary schools, and if we were all sitting consolidated, your argument would be well placed. But we support our 3 elementary schools, we don't have much of a choice. You have, if I'm counting pink dots correctly, 16 pink dots live on the Washington side, give or take, of the district, and about 18 pink dots, although there's some question about someone that's in a kite, on the Roxbury's Burnham side. We know that we want to make all 3 schools attractive. We know that we have a nice little division here of population already, according to your dots. We know that we seem to have, but suddenly don't have, space in 2 elementary schools, that we have to displace classrooms when it was my impression that we have extra space. And if we're going to spend money to renovate, it's going to be kind of an equal, at least for those 2 schools. If down the road we find that our population has decreased any further, then you can certainly close one of the 2 sections in Washington and still have your balance. I mean, on paper, it doesn't seem complicated. And I think if we're going to tailor-make every assignment of every teacher to every child, why aren't we doing that in all the other grades? I mean, basically, you're assigned a teacher, and I'm putting aside those identified children. That's your job, and I respect that, and that's extremely important, and that was the basis, the soul, the guts of what REACH was.
Right, that's what we have REACH for.
But
Right.
it seems now have flourished into another direction with how many kids are actually identified REACH kids in the program of the 33 that we have?
We'll have 5 in the fall of next year.
And your responsibility is to make sure those children are getting absolutely 1,000% of the services due them in whatever location. We have service professionals all over the district now. It doesn't seem like a big hardship for a PT person to stop in Burnham when they're giving services in Burnham rather than spending more time in WPS. I'm just so worried that we are so customizing the lives of these families and kids that by the time they go to kindergarten, they're going to be on little silver platters here.
Well, it's really only the special needs students that we're customizing, and we continue to do that for them throughout their
Those 5 should be like,
careers.
that's in separate territory, but I'm seeing the vast other number here, so much so that we demanded, or some of us demanded, that we add a 3rd section of REACH. I think we have a valuable opportunity to balance the district here. The numbers show it. I think the parents would respond to it. I do think the kiddies on the other side of the district that might not get 1 teacher or another, there are only 2 so far, will learn to live with a 3rd. And also, the argument made on these pages is not full. Because other than saying we need an arbitrary 50,000 for that playground, but nothing for this playground, and we need additional buses, but that number wasn't put here, so that I don't know if the cost is in 147,000 for the program, or only at WPS?
The 147,000 that you
That
all
case wasn't
approved.
made clearly in this presentation.
She's
This
trying to answer your
presentation
question,
is
though.
supposed to be about total costs, and the bus costs are not outlined at all.
So, well, I think the presentation was given before that the 147,000 you approved was for a half-time special ed teacher, a half-time para, and the equipment that we thought we needed at Washington Primary.
And the bus.
No,
No additional.
no additional bus, we have 4 buses.
Okay.
Okay,
No bus.
so that was the presentation given before. So instead of repeating that presentation, we didn't include that again this time. So what we included was new information. So the 125,000 of the 147,000 was a teacher and a para. That was back at the last meeting when you all agreed to the 147. That's the paperwork you have. 125 was for a half-time teacher and a half-time para. The remaining 22,000 was the cost on the Washington Primary page. The bathroom adjustment, the sink adjustment, and the furniture. So we just didn't duplicate what we presented the last time. That's
And to speak to the buses, spring is an incredibly busy time for the bus company, and so Ally did make efforts to meet with Pam, but Pam would not be able to give us that quote by tonight, but at least we wanted to show you the mapping of what she was up against and figuring out those different routes. So we certainly could get that, but it just wasn't feasible by this evening.
Well, I think the staff, I don't see to stay here any longer and deal with the staff. I think they've made their positions known. They've explained every detail that we requested from them. We haven't asked them for an opinion, but I think they've been very clear in what direction.
And they gave it. They're here, there's people who have questions. Michelle?
I was just wondering,
Thank you.
all the pink dots are the students who wanted transportation. How many additional are not on the map then?
I think 30 plus students wanted transportation, so there's 10 to 12 others that did not.
There are 10 to 12 more.
Mhm.
Okay. You don't happen to remember breakdown of
I might have it.
of where they all are?
Do you want to know specifically who, like, where
Well, I was just like, so 10 to 12 more. So what's the total we're at? 43?
45-ish?
45, wow. That's fantastic.
That
So, just, do you happen to know of those 45, how many are from each town? I know it gets really complicated.
No, I
like wait
did
lists and all
once,
that
I just
stuff, but
didn't, hold on, I could. Okay, so I only have, in the information I have right now, I only have the breakdown of who currently was in the program. I didn't bring the additional, oh no, that's not true. All right, so I have currently in the program, 7 from Bridgewater, or coming into our program, 7 from Bridgewater, 13 from Roxbury, 22 from Washington, 2 staff. I don't know what that adds up to. What do you have? Okay.
Right.
Of those, I don't know who selected transport or not. My secretary does, so I could certainly get you that data from which towns.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I just was trying to get a handle on the whole program,
Yep.
the breadth of it, and where everyone's coming from. And so that just missed me, because there are 16 pink dots in Roxbury. And so maybe some of those children's station
Oh, sure.
students are not Roxbury.
Right.
I was just surprised. I was like, wow, they're growing.
No, that's a variety of towns are represented there. Maybe even Washington, to be very honest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's blood. And that's fine. I was just curious.
Another thing is Washington has 2 models. Students that arrive and leave at noon, so the 9 to 12 get the transportation, but it has an extended model 9 to 2, which would not be the third class. The third class would
Be 9
just
to
be
12.
9 to 12 that
With the
has the transportation.
right.
So I just wanted to remind you of that.
Right.
Yeah, I have continued to two busing questions. One busing question and one enrollment question. I'm still not sure that if these, I know what you said about the distance of these, but if in a post-transition world, were such a transition to happen, these two buses take kids here, and these two buses take kids here. So it's still only 4 buses in the morning.
No.
Well, if these kids now are being bused up to here, then they could just go here in the same way.
Then you're switching all of their teachers who they currently have.
And they might be in the 9 to 2 program.
Right.
Well, the 9 to 2 program, well, they get bused to the 9 to 2.
Yeah, they just don't get bused home.
Okay, so that's why we need the extra buses.
Right, right. So, you know, and when you look at this too, you'll notice that there are 8 students at Children's Station. 4 are children that were on the wait list that now we have let in, and 4 are children that were not on the wait list, and potentially, I don't know them off the top of my head, but several of them who already are transported from there. They have their classes set. Some of them are 9 to 2, parents pick up on the back end. Some of them are 9 to 12. Many of them are 9 to 12 because the bulk of the kids that are at Children's Station. But you're talking about 2 buses then coming to that location, right? That same location to bring kids.
One bus picks up 4.
One bus picks up 4 and goes to Washington. One bus picks up 4 and goes to another school.
I see, I got you.
And when you look up at where the 2 students live right next to each other up in the triangle, same scenario. One bus comes to that same street, picks up one to go to Washington, and one picks up one to go to another location. So you have buses crisscrossing and going to the same location up in this configuration.
Wait, up in this triangle?
These 2 right here. She's talking
Oh,
So-
but these two would go to,
No, one goes to Washington, and one, because it's a person that got in on the wait list, would go to the other classroom.
I think that's the kind of person who would probably pretty be happy going to Washington.
I'm sure they would be, but how am I supposed to kick somebody out that wanted the position that they were offered before you gave another classroom?
They may not want 9 to 12.
I know.
They might want 9 to 2, exactly.
Right. Well,
So that's-
as I said, these might, the problem that I have is that all of this is very Washington-centric, and I really would like to be able to balance this out, because then who knows how many more students you would have from Bridgewater families enrolling to fill this out. Because at the moment, you know, it is, and I don't mean this in a town against town thing, I'm just talking about Washington-centric in terms of enrollment. When you have a total of 42 applications, at least before, that just changed recently. And for each town, there was 23 from Washington, 13 from Roxbury, and 6 from Bridgewater. On your original acceptance, 19 were accepted from Washington, 8 from Roxbury, and 3 from Bridgewater. And then the wait lists were 4 from Washington, 5 from Roxbury, 3 from Bridgewater. So, for some reason, if you are in Washington, you apply to REACH, your acceptance rate is 83%. And if you're in Roxbury, your acceptance rate is 62%. And if you're in Bridgewater, your acceptance rate is 50%. So it seems like living in Washington, you have a far greater chance of getting into REACH. And I know you said it's a lottery. And I know it's
You're
based on
certainly
geography.
welcome to come each year. We put papers in a hat and we pull them out by age group. You're certainly welcome to
Just
come
by
and
age group.
observe.
So it really is.
There are people with me when it's done, and they do the drawing, I write the names down. So you're certainly welcome to visit us when we do our drawing any year.
I know, as I said, it would just be nice to be able to, because we're dealing with lotteries, a lottery where people would say, 2 towns with people would be interested in a lottery for Roxbury and Bridgewater, and 1 town would be interested in a lottery for Washington. That you would be able to balance that admissions process out more too, because you could have people with geographic requests as to where they would want to be, based on this, and then based on this rate. So, as I said, I appreciate the logistics, but I am concerned that for this age group and for this geography, it would really be beneficial to spread pre-K out in the region. Greg?
I don't know how much longer we're going to talk about this issue, but you've got the staff standing here telling you that keeping it where it is the way to go. that they don't recommend that you make any changes. You've got a cost for moving it to either one of the other schools that's going to double the cost of the program, which means that, and then we hold out the hope that we'll increase tuition. In order to cover just the added cost of moving it from Washington Primary to either Burnham or Booth, just to cover the added cost, you would have to increase tuition from $900 to $4,300, because it would cost another $3,400 just to cover the extra $150,000 for the 2 buses and the playground, and then the other expenses that are involved in it. I mean, I don't know how this is a hard decision. I mean, look, I understand people want to balance the region, but there are probably better and easier ways to do it than this. And I think that this isn't going to accomplish that purpose. It's going to move a few kids to one of the other schools. You're going to disrupt a program. You're going to make staff's job harder. You're going to go against the educational recommendation of the professionals you hired. And you're going to make the taxpayers double the cost, or you're going to have to quadruple the tuition for the people that are in the program. And frankly, I think that's like a list of unpalatable alternatives. Moreover, when you look at the presentation that's made, it's got benefits and challenges. And if you move it to Booth, you've got 2 benefits and 2, 4, 6, 7 challenges. If you move it to Burnham, you've got 2 benefits and 7 challenges. And if you leave it where it is, you've got 7 benefits, 8 benefits, and 1 challenge. And they said that they can meet the challenge. This is not a hard decision. There's only one reason to move it, and the reason is because you're trying to balance the region or otherwise affect a political decision. It's not for educational purposes, and it's surely not for money. And I think that, if you want to overrule the people you've hired, you really should have a good reason to overrule the people you've hired, and I have yet to hear it. I just hope we don't sit here all night and talk about something that we're clearly not moving on tonight, nor should we, because we've got too many unknowns, not the least of which there's no money in the budget to fund it. We've already approved the budget. The voters have already approved the budget. So at most, we're talking about something that you might consider a year from now. Why are we going to waste all night talking about something that's at least a year away from any decision? And so far, the metrics are horrible.
Susan?
If I remember correctly, the getting to the cost of the education right now, the preschool program, it's like $600 a year, I do believe.
It's 600 for 9 to 12, 1,000 for 9 to 2.
You could easily quadruple that and still be far below what the market rate is.
But not what public schools.
For preschool.
But not what public schools, preschools are. You could not, the only school that we found in that area would be Region 15. They're the only ones that are $4,000. Everyone is in Region 6 is still free, with transportation one way. People are in the 2,000-ish range. So 4,300 stood out for Region 15. That stood out among the whole group.
But we're at 1,000.
Yep.
And we throw in transportation. So we're still, we're far from where it could be if price is that much of an issue. We're not at universal preschool yet. I think balancing out the region, there's a benefit to that. There's a real benefit to that. There's a kid who lives stone's throw from my house who gets picked up at 8:10 in the morning, and that has to be for Reach preschool. That's a long bus ride. That's a long bus ride for a preschool, and I'm about a mile from Burnham. So I think there is something to say for shorter bus rides in general. Breaking people up based on geography and less on the taking out the special needs kids and what teacher is going to work best for them. Geography can do a lot in terms of saving time on a bus ride. So I see benefits to breaking it up.
I'm not going to disagree with the benefit of geography. I do think it's important to point out that, I had a child who was in Reach. We live in Bridgewater, and I really didn't see that as a real negative, even though she did have a very long bus ride. Would I have preferred it to be closer? Of course. I mean, what parent wouldn't? want a closer, shorter bus ride
Right.
for their child, particularly their younger children. However, I would just caution against that because I'm not sure if we're talking to the parents and what's most important to parents, I think a reasonable cost is probably very important. I think a program that's high quality where they trust the teachers is very important. So I do want us to keep those factors in mind, particularly if we're talking about in the future raising the tuition. I have a hard time with making geography the only reason why we're raising the tuition.
I think the tuition needs to be raised regardless.
Okay.
I don't think that's
there,
a-
But that's not before us. All right. It certainly is an issue that can be raised. Michelle?
I don't know if we're gonna vote on this tonight or not.
There's no motion, so.
Right, so,
If somebody wants to make one, let's get
so
on
I
with
just, I'm, you know, listening to what everyone has to say and I understand, why some people would want to have a classroom either in Booth or Burnham. But I don't think we can do that for next year. I think it was difficult. The 147 barely passed this board, and there were some people who were wondering why we were spending so much money for 12 or 13 extra students. So then to double that for next year when we haven't even budgeted just doesn't seem even feasible. I do think we might want to revisit the conversation in a future year when we have new numbers and when we don't have this complicated wait list, who's been promised what scenario. I think we're talking about increasing tuition, and I think we should have a conversation as a board next year, whenever it is, January, before the REACH people have been promised anything, so that we would have a clear sense going forward. And we'll look at our numbers. This third classroom might not, I'm hoping that we always need 3 classrooms, but it might be it might be short term. So I don't see this, I don't see splitting it up as something that we can do for next year, budget-wise. It's not recommended educationally, but I also think that the wait list and what was promised makes the whole thing very complicated. I think if we were to talk about it, it would have to be in a future year. And we can take a look then at our numbers and what's been put into the program.
Anything for Ellen?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. If we could look at this again pre-lottery, I guess, or maybe right after, before anybody's promised anything. Because I think that's part of the misfortune here is that, you know, I think there was a little bit of, you know, understanding that he did administrator and staff's advice. I still think the administration could have toughened it out and checked with these people to see what after the fact. But I'd also appreciate they would promise something and that's it. But before anyone's promised anything, you might find a very nice even split next year between people, and that would alleviate the busing issue. Because the 2 issues for expense are the buses and the playground. And I'd also think that by the time next fall or winter rolls around, we could have a little more of an assessment as to actually what kind of a playground we need for that's age appropriate for pre-K and the special requirements of those pre-K kids. Because, you know, the Booth and Burnham playgrounds cost, what was it, 75, 80,000, I forget?
120.
100. One of them was 120, one was 100, I think, or 95. And those are massive. I don't think we need something half that big. I don't think we're talking about that. So as I said, this $50,000 is a nice number to sway us to status quo, and not wanting to interrupt busing is a nice way to sway us to status quo, but I think we might be able to work around this and make everybody happy next year, provided we are permitted to address this again, as opposed to just saying, oh, well, it's up at WPS and everything else is, and Washington, we'll just leave it that way. It'll just be interesting. Valerie?
And the minutes are confusing. I've been spending several minutes reading the minutes of that night that was very contentious when we passed or did not pass, March 23rd, the ed meeting when we discussed the budget. And if you read it, it's way confusing as to what this board actually did. did. So I think we need to have a transcript of at least that part of the minutes, because it looks like that motion never was successful. About the 146,000. Also, it's not, what do you mean?
I was there.
Oh,
It was
well,
clear.
I'm not saying that you weren't there, but in terms of what our action was on voting, if someone wants to explain the minutes of the 23rd to me of March, please do. It never says that we voted on this specific, and there was linkage with nurses. I'm not arguing that that was the intent of the board, but it's confusing, because the reason why I'm reading it is there was a big statement by Attorney Kava about including transportation of about 45,000 on top of the 100 to expand the program. So now I'm totally confused as to what our transportation cost is, and we don't know what our staffing cost is, at least not on this piece of paper. So having more information is going to be very, very important. But, Mr. Chair, if we can get a transcript, I'd really appreciate it.
This was in that meeting.
I have a copy of this already,
Right, so those are the costs.
but the motion was not properly recorded.
Anything further on this? All right, ladies, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda, policies. 8.1, first reading, policy 6130, organizational plan. Michelle?
Yes. This is a very simple change that just reflects Chicago becoming 612. We happened to just notice as we were looking at some other things that it wasn't consistent. So we're just asking the board to approve the policy, reflect what we currently have.
So moved for a first reading?
Second.
Second by Greg, is there any further discussion? For approving 6130 as for a first reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Item passes. Next is 8.2, first reading policy 5131.911, hazing. Michelle.
Yes. All right. This one's a little more difficult. Our current policy, if you open up your packets, you have a current policy and what we're proposing. Our current policy, wow, is it 2000? Well, not too long ago, we came to you with a policy including safe school climate, and recently a law was passed that needs us to include, and it is highlighted all over the new policy. I want to get the language right. So just let me. Teen dating violence. So teen dating violence is now a new category that is going to be included in the bullying prevention safe school climate policy. So that is the basic, that is sort of the impetus for the new policy. But as we got the new policy from CAVE, we realized that they had expanded their policy to include definitions. Yes, they had included the new policy to include definitions and had a more specific outline of the Safe School Climate Plan that is required by law. And so we went through this very carefully with the policy committee, I think 2 times, maybe even 3 times, pulling in what we felt we needed to keep, lining out things that CAVE had proposed that we felt were additional or repetitive. So if you look at the new proposed policy, there is a lot of highlighted new language, most of it relating to teen dating violence, but some of it, it just specifying, for example, there's a whole section on pages F and G, prevention and intervention strategy, that is supposed to be part of our regulations. It's specific language about prevention and intervention that we're required to have, and we decided to go ahead and include it in our policy this time around because we felt we didn't we need to have administrators recreate all of the work that had already been done, so. If you have any questions, please ask, it's a lot to digest. We spent a lot of time, Michael Allen and I, going back and forth between proposed and our current, making sure that it reflected what we felt was best for the region.
Michael?
I'd like to move that we accept policy 5131.911 for first reading.
Second.
Second.
Yeah, question. I do have a question. Look, I read through this, and it does seem fairly, actually, a little more straightforward than you led on. It's primarily a change to incorporate teen dating violence and bullying. But the question I guess I have is under the Safe School Committee, School Climate Committee, which is the next to last page, it lists the things that the committee shall do. One of them is to review and amend school policies relating to bullying and teen dating violence. I don't think that can be done by a committee. I think that's got to be done by the board. I think that needs some nuanced modification, unless I'm misreading it.
Well, it's, you know what, they're probably misusing the word policy there, because those are really regs. There's school, internal school, so they're the schools committee that's put together for prevention, and so there are policies relating to bullying and teen dating violence.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone has the authority to make policy for the region
It's
except
not
the Board of
regional
Ed.
policy, it's like internal school, it should really probably be regulation, it's the school's I know.
You're not helping yourself, because if it's
No,
a regulation,
I know,
it's
I
not.
Hold on,
agree.
if you could just say, for the second reading, that the committee will make recommendations to the board with regard to modifications to the policy.
Well, no, the more specific the question, the better, and I completely understand what you're saying. So it's just the word policy. It's this internal school, what? Regulations?
We lost all
Relating to-
of our
It's the plan,
staff.
it's the Safe School
It's
Climate
this-
Plan.
Every
that's
school has
required
their own
by
safe school
every
climate
school.
plan.
I understand that, but this whole section is what the committee does. They work on the plan, but this specifically says review and amend school policies. And I really think that, I mean, if this came from a proposed CABE-type alternative policy, I somehow think that's inconsistent. And I think if we can articulate what they are that it's adopting, we should put that word in here. But if it really is policy, rules, regulations, I think that's a board function. That's all I'm saying. It's under our, the law, it's our function. And if it's something else, then we should articulate what it is. That's all. Before we adopt this for a second reading, we need to check that out.
Understood?
Yep. All right.
It's either got to be changed from policy, or it's got to be that the committee makes recommendations to the board to modify the policy.
Astoundingly, that's the only thing in here I saw that I wasn't sure of.
All right, it's Susan?
Yeah, in the first paragraph, just a small thing, an ing needs to be added to the word maintaining. It's one of the last words, second to the last word on the first line. It's committed to creating and maintaining an educational environment that is physically,
I'm
emotionally.
sorry, I was finishing Greg's notes. What page are you on?
It's the first
Line.
paragraph, bullying prevention and intervention is the first line.
Okay.
Second word from the right needs
Oh,
an
maintaining,
ing.
yep, thank you.
The first line of the second paragraph, I have a hard time with the last couple words that the board also prohibits any form of bullying behavior outside of the school setting if such bullying, and then it goes on. The word if such there's no bullying that should be tolerated. So the words if such bullying needs to change. Because there's no bullying that's tolerated, and that's what we're trying to put forward.
I agree.
So-
What makes this difficult is that is bullying outside of the school setting. So there may be limitations to what we may have limitations. So I believe the if is because they're explaining how it creates a hostile environment coming back to.
But that creates, outside of the school setting, that creates a hostile environment at school
At
for the
school.
student. So
Or
instead of
is that-
if such bullying, just take all that out and put in that. by definition, bullying creates a hostile environment, et cetera, et cetera. Not my it's not a legal opinion, it's just, that's what it does, and that's why we don't stand for it, but the words "if such bullying," I don't know, I will just put that out there. And then under definitions for bullying, bullying means the repeated use by one or more students. Bullying can happen in one shot. It can automatically create something that's hostile, and act can be very hostile and create a hostile environment and dangerous environment or whatever. The repeated use, I take issue with.
That's the problem. I remember arguing about that too. It has to be a repeated behavior, which makes no sense to me either.
Can't we as a board?
Well, actually it does though.
Define what is.
You have to go with the state's legal definition.
Yeah, I think it actually has to be a pattern. I'll tell you why. Because otherwise, any time two people have a disagreement or have words, you're going to track them into a bullying situation, and that's just not the definition of it. Bullying is a repeated returning again and again to that person and just badgering them.
It doesn't mean that an aggressive act that falls under our discipline code cannot be disciplined. It just isn't defined as bullying until it happens again.
Bullying, okay.
It's
So what would that fall under? Would that
pattern
fall
could
under the
be
same?
Assault.
If you have one girl saying something negative and 7 of her friends also say one thing negative, it's a pattern among a group of people. It's still a pattern. So you're looking for a pattern either over time or among people for the offense.
Good point.
And you don't want to ruin a kid, especially in the middle school. A lot of this happens in the middle school where, it's a one thing and then they're labeled as a bully. So once you're labeled as a bully, I mean, you are on our records, we have a lot of steps to go through. So I think the repeated is very important.
Could I ask you a question though, following up on that? How in God's name do you not classify a lot of bullying in middle school?
Well, that's why you have to have the ability to use your judgment.
I mean, did anyone by any chance, this was, I hate to say this, but this was, if you saw this last Sunday's Simpsons, you would see that they created a law on bullying in the town, and everyone was accusing it. They were all in jail because they were all bullying. Which you can take something too far, I think is the point.
So you could theoretically do different things to different people? And
Well, no, because there was a
bullying,
That would be a
there's
pattern.
no pattern of one.
And you
There would be a pattern within that one
may
person, but
be
not behavior.
suspended, you may be expelled. I mean, you are going to follow the discipline. You just may not be labeled in the bullying realm.
Huh.
Yeah.
See, in the old days, it was I know when I see it. It was like,
All
oh,
right, is there anything further? So there's a couple of changes that you amended. All right, can we accept the policy as amended for first reading? It's been moved and seconded. Is there anything further? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, it's accepted. Michelle, we'll come back to this.
Yes, I've made those notes and we'll bring it back to a second reading. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item 9, consider request from Burnham School PTO for use of Burnham School for the Burnham PTO dinner dance, waiving policy prohibiting alcoholic beverages for the evening of Friday, June 5th, 2015.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion, Greg?
Just the last time we approved one of these, we did it in accordance with the usual stipulations, which include the provision of insurance. They include no alcoholic beverages served until school and regular staff has been dismissed, that kind of thing. So there's not a building ongoing educational function being performed while there's the serving of alcoholic beverages.
And if I could just add, this is only in case of rain. It's not going to take, if it's a beautiful night, they're going to be at the pavilion. It's only in case of rain.
Any further? Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, it passes. Thank you. All right, do you have a need for executive session for a personal matter? Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
Move that we go into executive session for a personnel matter.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, we're in executive session. Does anybody need that?